The Investor's Edge series presents Finding Your Edge, How to Win at the Game of Commercial Real Estate Investing. Written by Jeremiah Boucher and narrated by me, Jeremiah Boucher. This book's dedicated to the scrapper and the fighter, the entrepreneur who's working to build something and has that fire inside to succeed. May you find that edge, that advantage from knowing your strengths and finding your niche that will lead to success. What it takes to find your edge. Finding your edge in commercial real estate investing is about digging deep, being creative, and ceaselessly looking for ways to get an advantage over your competition. There's no more competitive field than the area of investing in commercial real estate. This is the game the smartest and most powerful people play over a lifetime. Finding your edge is my attempt at igniting the spark that allows you to find your niche, your differentiator, and your unique strength. I'll share the insider strategies I've learned that can allow you not only to have a seat at the game table, but also have the confidence to be successful at playing the game of commercial real estate. Your edge, your advantage, it's not only about knowledge, it's also about finding that edgy side of you that lights that fire in your belly or makes you feel that chip on your shoulder that drives you to work harder. It's the drive you need so you don't wait for anyone or anything to give you permission to play. The edge overcomes hesitancy and indecision, and it gives you the vision you're working for in terms of both success and lifestyle. It gives you the guts to push through the discomfort you'll encounter as you learn, looking like a fool, getting rejected, or not knowing all the answers. The edge can drive you to find a way in your plan or your vision to become a reality, even though the industry can be shrouded in confusion and secrecy, effectively pushing outsiders away. Essentially, the real estate game is based on simple math. As investors, we understand the playing field, the players, the rules, and our unique advantage to win. Over a career, we get better and better at playing the game until we're rewarded by a lifetime of wealth and abundance. Do you see yourself playing the commercial real estate game? If you're driven to get into commercial real estate in any capacity, whether active or passively, it's the greatest game in the world. You'll find something that you can use to play the game and compete as you read Finding Your Edge. Introduction. Mistakes can represent opportunities. Adding value to those opportunities by learning and growing is what gives you an edge. The most successful people learn from their experiences with failure and from the mistakes of others. I've learned to play the game and found my edge in commercial real estate the hard way, by trying what I thought would work. I'm sure this is how people make it in any field. You want something so badly that you're willing to do whatever it takes to make it work. You repeatedly screw up, but you never look at it as failing. You just find another way to achieve what you believe is possible. There are so many ways to label failure: screwing up, losses, setbacks, disasters, flops, fiascos, or fuck-ups. Having the right mindset is what expands your potential in real estate investing and in life. It's no different than the scientific process any engineer or scientist would use. You try something and you realize you're most likely going to be wrong. You learn what not to do and you find out what doesn't work. Eventually, if you're truly committed to it and you keep at it, you will succeed. I believe that finding mentors is critical to success. Everyone needs a coach at some point in their career. The right coach opens up doors and helps you see opportunities that you didn't know existed. You can bypass years of trial and error mistakes with someone by your side who will share what they've learned. Bruce Lee once said, "Mastery is not attained by accumulating knowledge, but by stripping away to the essential." This rings true for me. As a product of our consumer culture and our self-help world, I always thought I needed more. I thought I needed more knowledge, more relationships, more experiences, and more money. However, I learned it's not about more. It's about knowing what's essential. The core teachings of Kung Fu are mastering your craft and being flexible like water. There is no one right way or style. Lee talks about a master who learns the fundamentals, the basic structures of fighting, and then strips away the garbage. Rather than dismiss what conventional education teaches you, this philosophy challenges you to be open and free to use what's needed and to let go of what is not. Creativity and overcoming barriers was something I learned out of necessity. There are many different ways to do something well, and there's a situation for every move or strategy someone has. When the easy or typical way wasn't an option for me because I didn't have any resources, I had to keep an open mind and find a new way. I discovered that if I could offer something of value, something another person needed, then a new approach could work. It's a question of knowing what you can do and thinking about what other people need. Commercial real estate is a competitive game. In order to win, you must do something better than your competition is doing, or sidestep the competition by finding a new playing field or creating a new game. Finding your edge in the game is about creating an advantage based on your unique and individual skills. Creativity is essential because there are very few rules in commercial real estate other than communicating with clarity and operating with integrity. My lack of resources, which I initially considered was a weakness, became my greatest strength. My situation forced me to be resourceful. I found I had assets that were far more important than money in the bank. I had time, energy, and a positive mindset, empathy and the ability to listen, a high risk tolerance, a hunger to learn, a lack of ego and a willingness to make mistakes. You can learn to find ways around barriers with creativity, energy, and attitude. My attitude is if you push me towards something that you think is my weakness, then I will turn that perceived weakness into a strength. Michael Jordan. I pushed myself in spite of my weaknesses and the things that I lacked. By finding new ways to do things, I discovered strengths that ultimately enabled my success. The stories I'll share will allow you to experience my lessons and failures as I learned how to become an alternative commercial real estate investor. It was a 20-year journey to reach my first $10 million in cash. My first decade was an absolute mess if you look at it based on failures alone. However, I wouldn't trade the learning and growing I experienced for anything. Those experiences made me a better investor, a better deal maker, and ultimately a better person. If you've made a few mistakes and failed in businesses or investments along the way, then the lessons we'll explore together in this book will change the way you view those failures. If you want to build your own real estate portfolio, my insights could save you years of wasted time, energy, and effort. You'll understand how to find and add value to quality investment properties and how to build a sustainable commercial real estate investment company. In real estate, there are unlimited points of entry. Erez Cohen, Real Estate Titans. When I began my career, I didn't know anyone in the commercial real estate community. I found my mentors in books and online courses and went to conferences. Finally, I created a value-add relationship with a leader in the mobile home park investment community named Dave Reynolds. He helped me avoid many mistakes. I wanted to share with you what I learned from my mentors and courses, as well as from my experiences in the field, spending countless hours practicing my craft. Part 1 of this book is the story of what it took for me to grow into the alternative commercial real estate investor I am today. I'll also describe how I see the game of commercial real estate playing out for my life and then my career as I move on to the next level. What I want to share above all is the mindset that helped me succeed and kept me in the game, which I summarized in my 6 EDGE principles. Number 1, find your value in the deal and find the value in your own skills. Number 2, innovate to gain an edge. You got to do something different. Number 3, stay the course to win. Real estate is a long game. You got to hang in there. Number 4, never get too high, never get too low. You got to control your emotions. If you can't control your emotions, you can't control your money. Number 5, real estate is a relationship game. It all boils down to trust. And then number 6, trust your instincts. You got to go with your gut. You got to believe in yourself. These 6 principles are described in part 2 of the book, along with stories about what I learned as I recognized and practiced them. You'll learn the intimate details of how I accomplished my goal of financial freedom by building a commercial real estate portfolio. I also want to share something about my story, where I came from, and how some of my first deals happened. This way you know how I invest and what happens in the communities where I invest in. This is important because we all make an impact on the world with what we do, and I want my impact to be positive. I choose properties, I improve them, and I manage them with the goal of improving the lives of people who use them. At the same time, these properties earn great returns for the investors, which can change their lives too. So my introduction to real estate was found in my father's attic. One cheesy-sounding infomercial course on tape by Carlton Sheets called No Money Down touted that you could buy real estate with no money. That course led to a community college class taught by a man I respected, an older, successful Las Vegas developer and real estate investor. I built on those basic concepts by becoming a real estate agent, learning through books and courses, and then gaining experience by offering value to others. One of the keys for me was deciding I could find unorthodox ways of doing things, even when I didn't have the money and connections many people considered essential to being successful as a real estate investor. It was a rough start, and it took me a decade to find and develop the strategies that ended up working for me. Growing up, I was aware of the attitude of fear around money that was present in the daily lives of my parents. It controlled them. While it wasn't until I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki that I understood the mindset that I needed to develop about money. I knew even as a child that I didn't want to be controlled by fear or not having enough money. That seed grew into a goal to learn how to invest in real estate. We all have a journey we must take to achieve personal success. If you're seeking to grow not only as a real estate investor, but as a person, you're in the right place. The investment strategy I share is one path to wealth in this industry. It's also a way to execute on investments within a profitable private equity fund to the benefit of everyone involved. Throughout this book, I want to give you the benefits of my experiences without the pain, so you understand this business without suffering the consequences of the lessons learned like I did. The lost deals, the lost money, and the lost sleep. If your goal is to invest passively in commercial real estate partnerships or private equity funds, you'll understand how the business works so you can make good choices for your investments. Thanks for coming along to gain the insight from my mistakes. I hope to expand your real estate knowledge so you can use it to positively impact your life and your family's lives for generations. Part 1. Learning commercial real estate investing from the ground up. The games of real estate and life. Now, I've been a sports lover all my life, and if you would have asked me at 18 what I was going to do with my life, the answer would have been simple. I'm going to be a professional football player. I lived and breathed the training, the practice, the teamwork, and the games. I loved the competition. It was truly my life. Now, it should have been obvious to me that I wasn't going to make it to the NFL. By my senior year of high school, I finally realized that I'm a short, slow, white guy. So I found a new place where at least some of the same elements that I loved about football I could do with my career. When I did finally start my investing career, I found an industry that fed my drive to compete and gave me opportunities to create my own playbook. As I learned the business, practiced, and then started to find success, the sports parallels with my life and my investing career became clear. A real estate investing career and a football game are both made up of 4 quarters of development, with a halftime after the first and second quarters. My life and my investing career seem to fit neatly in 4 quarters, but your investing career and your life parallels may be different. Many real estate investors make their money initially as entrepreneurs in other businesses and then turn to real estate to invest their wealth to create passive income, to diversify, and to own real assets as a hedge against inflation. As a result, you may be starting your investing career at a different time of life than I did. However, the rules are the same. For me, I've chosen to make commercial real estate investing my lifetime career, so the games of real estate and life are intricately intertwined. Your investment games may look different. Take what you see as useful here and apply it. And just like in commercial real estate, there are very few rules. You determine the level you want to play at and what winning means to you. The first quarter of my game was spent figuring out what I wanted for my life and then determining that commercial real estate was where I wanted to be. I learned a little bit of offense but didn't score any touchdowns. What I mean by that is I made a little bit of money, but I didn't really own any assets. In the second quarter of the game, I was figuring out how to get some traction and develop some defense and offense. So I actually got some assets, but then I actually had to get some employees, had to figure out really what I was doing, and had to protect what I got. I needed a lot of timeouts to reevaluate what I was doing, and I found someone to coach me and help me build a sustainable winning strategy that was critical. Ultimately, I scored some points in my first half. Thank God, I made a little bit of money so I could stay in the business. And some of my biggest challenges and also wins have been around developing effective special teams. By that, I mean the staff of motivated individuals who support me and the partners who've helped me execute on my value-add strategies. You'll find more details on those things in the description of my first and second quarters. So even if you've never thought of your investing life strategy this way before, this can still be extremely valuable for you as a tool to help strategize for the rest of your game. If you're not at halftime yet, you can take a time out anytime you want and think about what you're doing and what needs to be changed for improvement. Whenever you reach the halftime, take that time to look back and look forward. Make new goals for self-education or finding a mentor to continue your growth and understanding. The decisions you make at halftime will impact the final outcomes of the game. As my favorite coach Bill Belichick does, he always has great halftime adjustments. So your life is the same way. Got to make those halftime adjustments. The 4 quarters of a commercial real estate investment career. So as an example of how the game of real estate can progress, here's how I view the 4 quarters of the game and how I see my game playing out. I added an overtime too because I live a healthy lifestyle and I want to be around for a long time so I can look at how this whole game plays out. First quarter kickoff. Choosing to invest in real estate and finding the right place. So for me, this was from birth until about age 25. Your age when you kick off your investing career may be much older than mine, but that's great. Wherever you are in life, when you decide your goal is financial independence through real estate, it's a great time to start. Connections through your other business ventures, knowledge, and capital can accelerate the game and make sure your first quarter is much shorter than mine was. A little wisdom to help you figure out what you really want can shorten your journey too. The best time to plant a tree, 20 years ago. The next best time, today. So plant your tree today and start investing. Action step. So pick an asset class and learn it. A lot of people start with investing in single-family homes, and then they want to evolve into commercial real estate. There's always the core 4 that you can go with. You can go with office, industrial, retail, or multifamily, or you can look at alternative asset classes like self-storage, car washes, or mobile home parks. So always look for your niche, look for the edge, but then decide which one you're going to go with and stick with it. Second quarter. Figuring it out, developing a team and a strategy. I started out my second quarter with nothing after the 2008 crash, and I had to rebuild. Commercial real estate's where I wanted to be, and as of this writing, I'm in the final stages of figuring out where I want to go with it as I'm around the age of 40. So it's been an exciting ride. The second quarter is where you're going to make your first deals, and you start to see how things really work. Your knowledge is accumulating, along with the cash flow and the capital for investing. You'll set up the business infrastructure you need to support your efforts here. The partnerships, the management, legal, accounting. Everyone you connect with here is an opportunity to learn knowledge from, and you start to build your key network of relationships to help you grow in the business. Actions during quarter 2. You're going to scale in size and sophistication, doing larger, more complex transactions in terms of the property size, the size of the capital raise, and the level of expertise needed to manage and add value. Halftime. Taking a break and regrouping, reassessing, and reconfiguring the plan. While reassessing during halftime fits great into the 4 quarters of the game, you actually should do this all the time. Is your goal too big? Is it too small? Maybe not quite the right direction? Your growing understanding of the game makes it easier for you to evaluate your progress and adjust your course. Actions. Develop a habit of taking stock of where you're going and whether you're heading in the right direction. Keep a finger on the pulse of the market and an eye out for the next downturn. Third quarter, showtime. Demonstrating your mastery of the craft and sharing it to the world. My third quarter of life in the game is starting at around age 40, but yours might be entirely different. This is where you're achieving some velocity of money and getting some scale. Now, of course, all this is related to your final goal. If you simply want passive cash flow in retirement and you don't plan to build an empire, your scale and timeline will look very different. However, you'll know how to choose partners to help you achieve your goals because you understand the game. Actions. Move from focusing on the transactions to building a business. You become the CEO, removing yourself from the tasks and focus on making valuable decisions. Build a team, an organization consisting of multiple departments and leaders who execute your strategy and plans. Fourth quarter. Focusing on what matters, benefiting from your wealth, and spending time on what's important are key. Your vision may be retirement or living your ideal life, so refine your goals to include exit strategies and actualizing your legacy. That legacy may be a real estate portfolio or something else you feed with your success. For me, this could be 60 or 65, and it might look like retirement, but we'll see when I get there. I don't think I'll ever retire. I love doing this too much, but I do want to slow down. I got a list of things I will do. Here's some of the things on that list, and I'm going to do these before I die. I want to explore some of the world's ancient historical sites. I want to sail the Mediterranean Sea. I want to learn the history about all the influential ports in Greek and Roman and Spanish history. I want to take a boat down the Nile and the Amazon rivers. I want to spend time in the largest cultures that are influencing the world, like China and India. And I got a million other places I want to go, and I don't have to wait till I'm old, but I'm going to do some really interesting things and not slowing down at 65. Actions. Transition from an offensive growth position into a defensive position, a wealth preservation position. Look at deals differently, and at least for some of them, with an eye of passive income potential over the long haul. When you're in your fourth quarter, you are looking at protecting and sustaining the wealth, not essentially growing it and multiplying it. Over time, your legacy, relaxing, and giving back to those around you. If you take care of yourself and you're lucky enough to live late into your 80s, you can ideally relax and give back to others and achieve a level of financial independence that makes you and your family and generations of your family very comfortable. In your overtime, enjoyable things have to be a bigger focus in your life. Vacation, grandkids, hobbies, travel. But outside of that, what are you going to build that's going to last? I mean, for me, I want to leave public parks and libraries. I want to create spaces outdoors where people congregate and they can get together and enjoy nature, or they can be by themselves and reading a book or with a lover and experiencing nature because it's so important for our bodies and our minds and our spirits. So that's my legacy. And I don't even care if anyone remembers me when I'm gone, but I'm going to leave that so people can enjoy it and get them off the damn computer and get them into Earth and get them to appreciate why this Earth is so beautiful and special. That's my purpose, my legacy. That's what I want to leave for people. What do you do in order to leave your mark and make a world a better place? Overtime actions. Build trusts, nonprofits, or foundations that allow you to channel your wealth wherever you see fit to make your mark long after you're gone. Understanding investor sophistication and growth. Beyond the four quarters of the game, there are levels of sophistication in investing that you should think about as you build your knowledge and relationships. The size of deals in terms of capital required and the sophistication of your own investment deals will likely increase as you learn how to invest. Understanding where other investors are in their investing careers will help you align your goals with their goals, and you find mentors who have the experience that you can benefit from. 4 levels of sophistication and expertise. As you progress in your investment career, the amount of capital available to you and your understanding and sophistication in deals you negotiate will increase. You can think of this in terms of complexity and scale. The size of the properties you buy and the amount of money needed to make that happen. These 4 levels of sophistication don't necessarily align with your progression through the 4 quarters of the game of life or even the game of investing. It's more about the asset classes that you choose to work with and the size of the properties that you prefer for your investment goals. Right now at my halftime, I'm transitioning from level 2 to level 3. Let's take a look at what the 4 levels mean. Level 1. Residential investors. Investors at level 1 are acquiring properties typically priced under $1 million, except in large metropolitan markets like New York or LA. These typically are 1 to 4 units, and they're single-family homes or they're apartments. The biggest challenge here is the economy of scale. If you have some capital and connections, you may skip this level entirely and start right into your commercial investing. This is smart. The leverage and velocity of money you can use to achieve are much greater in commercial real estate. Residential real estate will teach you the fundamentals of acquisition, financing, bookkeeping, operations, and executing on the capital improvements. Level 2. Small to mid-size investors. These consist of smaller commercial investors or small partnerships, syndications, or LLCs, investing in anywhere from $1 million to $10 million per deal, and the capital stack is typically 10 to 35% of equity needed to buy those deals. There are many value-add deals in this price range. Level 3. Large investors. These are larger scale investors, typically family offices or private equity funds. They buy deals from $5 million to $50 million or sometimes up to even $200 million at a time. They're very savvy and competitive. Larger deals can require 25 to 35% down or can be leveraged up to 90% plus financing, depending on the operator's experience and the track record of successful projects. As an example, as of writing this in 2020, HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, they'll do financing on Class A apartment buildings up to 92% leverage. Ironically, the more money and experience you have, the less money you actually need to do a deal in some circumstances. Level 4. Real estate investment trusts, REITs, or private equity funds. At this level, your company is either a large private institution or it's traded publicly and it only buys bigger assets in portfolios, typically $100 million or more. Examples include larger funds like Blackstone and Sam Zell equity funds. For me and my partners, these are the best buyers. Once my portfolio is big enough, my goal will be to sell to one of these types of buyers to get the maximum value. If your goal is to be a professional investor, understand that it takes time to learn, to build relationships, and for your strategies to yield results. Depending on when you start your goals, success for you may not mean getting to level 4 in sophistication. Level 2 may be the perfect place. However, you may need relationships with investors in other areas or other levels to achieve your goals. If you're new to investing, you need to understand how to identify a seasoned investor who could be a great mentor or partner. If your goal is to be a passive investor, look for partners or sponsors of funds who have developed a strategy for the game that makes sense to you. Typically, potential mentors will be at a level above yours. They need to have achieved the goals you're working toward to be most effective in helping you achieve what you would like to achieve. I always think of this like a trainer. I would never hire a fat trainer. I would always want someone that's in shape to teach me how to be in shape. So I want to find someone in real estate who's achieved what I would want in real estate so I can learn from them. They've actually did it. So for investors interested in real estate assets that produce cash flow, your strategy needs to involve evaluating each property over the long haul. This means looking at its revenue potential over years of ownership. So whether you sell an asset within a few years, after forced appreciation makes selling at a profit possible, or hold it long-term for the cash flow, this depends on your strategy and goals, and what's happening also in the marketplace. I've sold some assets within a year or two for a variety of reasons, and then I've also held others for a decade. Where you start and where you end up in terms of sophistication and dollar amounts depends first on how much ambition and drive is inside you, as well as your resources, your knowledge, your connections, and your comfort level. You may be able to bypass a level if you learn the game well enough and focus on the right things. If you want to be a passive investor, you'll want to focus on analyzing deals and building relationships with a strong general or managing partner. These are investors who will have a continuous deal flow and who will demonstrate a durable business with a strong record of returns. Some of the best passive investment options will be vertically integrated companies, the general partner at level 3 or above, who knows the asset classes in and out. They have skin in the game, meaning they put a lot of cash in the deal or are personally guaranteeing the debt, and have most operations in-house, project management, construction management, and accounting. These sponsors are not just money managers who make a fee by raising capital. They're real business owners whose interests are aligned with their investors' interests. They seek the highest potential for the best returns for passive investors. The benefits of commercial real estate. If you're reading this book, you're already interested in commercial real estate as an investment vehicle. You may already know the benefits of real estate investments. However, clearly understanding how to leverage these benefits will help you develop the most effective overall investment strategy for you when determining asset allocation in your personal portfolio. I found that membership in Tiger 21, it's a community of wealthy creators and investors, has benefited me greatly. We're required to do an annual portfolio review and presentation to our local peer group, including an outline of our total asset allocation. This has helped me to analyze my assets and then the best way to leverage them for my goals. As an example of how you can allocate your personal investments, this is a simple chart that I have in the book showing how I currently have my personal asset allocation. You can imagine mine's going to have the majority of commercial real estate as the primary asset class that I hold. Then I also have private equity fund investments. I hold some cash, cryptocurrency, residential real estate, and my smallest portion of investments are stocks and equities. Now, your investment allocations will look different depending on your goals and where you are in life and your appetite for what you like to invest in. However, commercial real estate has a place in every portfolio, and you could tune in the risk associated with your commercial real estate investments by the type of properties or funds you choose. The combination of high average returns, passive income, hedge against inflation, and based on real assets can be an integral part of the most conservative and passive or the most active and aggressive investment strategies. As an active investor, the true magic of commercial real estate is in the ability to leverage your capital to purchase a large asset. It's possible, as I will describe, and I've done it many times, to buy an asset with almost no capital at all. If you're evaluating the asset properly, it should grow in value and also provide cash flow year in and year out. The best part of real estate investments is the additional leverage you gain from the available tax advantages. These depreciation tax benefits allow you to reinvest your capital and defer when you pay taxes so you can continue to grow your wealth quickly. I can't stress enough how important understanding these tax benefits are to your overall success. The ultra-wealthy harness the valuable force of compounding by continually reinvesting their capital and profits year over year without any dilution from taxes. This creates the maximum velocity of your money. These are the benefits of commercial real estate investing in a nutshell. Number one, the velocity of money, meaning how quickly can you multiply your money? And the way you do that is to leverage bank debt, cash flow, consistent distributions that you receive, and tax advantages, where you defer paying taxes so you can go reinvest that money and grow it quicker. Number two, you have control over your investments, meaning you have influence. You can improve the property and improve your chances of getting a better return. Creating velocity of money. So the leverage you can get by borrowing to invest in commercial real estate increases the velocity of your money, allowing you to grow whatever starting capital you have as fast as possible. It's possible to grow your portfolio starting from nearly nothing, enough for you to be financially independent within a decade. In contrast, in traditional stock investing, you invest and you wait till you're 65 or 70 years old, actively working your whole life, only to have a modest retirement saved up. This leaves you to live the rest of your life on a tight budget. Ugh. Who wants to hang out on a beach in Ibiza when they're in their 70s? I'd rather make my fortune and do whatever I want to do while I'm still relatively young and in good shape and I want to enjoy life's adventures. With traditional stock investing, you're constantly fighting three enemies. Number one, hidden brokerage fees. Many times, your money manager is charging you large fees to invest in different stocks, and you can do this on your own on E-Trade. They're diluting your investment. Number two, annual taxes. There's no tax advantages to getting dividends or buying and selling a stock at a profit. Number three, inflation. You're constantly losing to inflation if you don't compound your money quickly. So no one will loan you money to invest in stocks. The leveraged opportunities available in commercial real estate don't exist in the stock market, or at least for the average individual investors like you and me. You can control your investment. In commercial real estate, you own something that you can control. You decide how you operate that property, what it will look like physically, who will rent that property, and for how much they're going to pay. And if you buy the property right, you can force that appreciation rather quickly. This is an important reason why I own commercial real estate. I want to be in control of my financial future. I want to leave behind the sense of helplessness I experienced growing up. I found commercial real estate because I realized I no longer wanted to be a passive bystander to my own life. Creativity is king. There's no one set way to do a deal. So commercial real estate's a little like the Wild West. Anything can happen, and you need to be ready to react and go with it. So once a middle-aged Western Texan cowboy showed up at the Hampton Inn in Amarillo, Texas, totally tanked, he came to sign the purchase agreement with me. So I listened to him slur and watched him stumble around, but ultimately the property had some upside, and he was too drunk too often to even realize it. I helped him get a good price, yet I knew I could increase the returns quickly with some simple improvements. He certainly wouldn't be the only cowboy that I interacted with throughout my career, and every deal is different, and that provides endless variety in how you can make things work. Being different and creative allows an investor with no cash to compete at the same level as a large real estate investment company or a group of wealthy private investors. When you work as a real estate investor, you discover new opportunities and new journeys every morning. You're on the high seas looking for treasure. The modern real estate sea is the phone and email. You cast your net out there, you look for clues, and you listen for little hints that will get you a little bit closer to that exciting gold. As my mentor Scott Shields said, it only takes one deal, one time to change your life forever. It's not about the wealth. I'm also grateful for the rush I get playing the game. I truly love what I do, and if you're like me, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's my love for the game that drives me to get up and work hard every single day. As a kid, I figured out that if I were going to have any success on the track, on the mat, or the field, I had to work my ass off. I believed if I worked hard enough, I could actually win, even when the other guy was more gifted or more talented than me. The chip on my shoulder that developed because I was a little bit smaller, a little bit slower, and not as naturally talented as the better athletes on the field carried me far in real estate. The importance of having a vision. It took a long time and a winding road for me to finally understand the importance of establishing a concrete vision with actionable, manageable goals. Having no cash freed me to be resourceful and creative, to look for alternatives. I had to learn fast and work hard until I got to the point where I was able to consistently beat more experienced and more highly capitalized investors. But if I had started with more of a concrete vision, I might have spared myself some of the trials and low points I endured along the way. I offer this as the first step in your investing journey. Start with a vision of where you want to go and what you want to accomplish. It sounds so simple, but it's very important. My vision was not just a financial vision, it was a lifestyle vision. It wasn't just about not having to worry about money. I wanted to create something that was built on not just my success, but the success of everyone I worked with, buyers and sellers, and the people who make those things happen. What I built needed to make a difference for everyone involved and be done with integrity. I also wanted the freedom to buy whatever I wanted, travel wherever I wanted, and give nice gifts to friends and family whenever I wanted. I knew how important it was to have a solid accountant, have a bookkeeper, have a personal assistant to help me organize my financial life, and I wanted control of my time. What is there but time and energy? That was it, and I wanted the freedom from working a 9-to-5 so I controlled my own time. Now, if you want wealth, it's not about cash flow, it's about owning assets. The cost of living in most people's lifestyles increase in the cost over time. Money loses value, but assets not only hold their value, they also appreciate and they produce cash flow at the same time. If you don't have assets, you don't have wealth. At first, my vision was simply to make enough money so I could be free of the fear that controlled my parents. As I started to understand what I was doing and I achieved some success, my vision changed. It's important to confirm your vision and revisit periodically to make sure it's still what you want. It's okay to change your vision, and this happens often when you get a taste of success and you start to realize what kind of potential you truly have. I know that's what's happening for me right now. Starting out with nothing was a weakness, but it eventually became my biggest strength. Having no money forced me to think unconventionally and creatively, teaching me how to maximize every resource available to me. That process allowed me to compete in the game of real estate, a game where many people believe having money is critical to success. You don't have to have money if you understand the game and find creative ways to offer value. Regardless of whether you want to be a lead partner, general partner, the sponsor, or a passive investor, a capital investor, a limited partner, you still need to know how the game is played. That knowledge will help you make the right decisions that align with your personal goals and choose the best partners. The best meaning the people who will complement your unique goals, talents, and skills. My hope is that you'll benefit from my experience that I've gained over learning how to create deals from perceivably nothing, no assets, no credit, very little knowledge, because I know there's another way to make things work. In this rapidly shifting economy, we must all adopt the belief that there's no such thing as just static, standard process or an orthodox approach to any way of doing one business deal. If all of us as investors don't constantly adapt, we're going to be wiped out. I learned by making mistakes, by trying what looked like the best path and either failing and then learning or succeeding. I don't regret any of these mistakes. Because of them, I'm now able to practice what I know works best. I have absolute confidence in my abilities. I know how to stay disciplined in my approach to commercial real estate investing, and I can eliminate the non-essentials that don't serve my business. You can benefit from my mistakes too by learning from my hard-earned lessons or by choosing to invest with me. What I value the most as my business has grown are the relationships that I've developed. This is one aspect of the long game of real estate that every investor can benefit from if you take it to heart. My goal is to offer the benefits of my strategies to other investors through my books and through my funds. My approach to improving the properties we buy expands our success for our investors. We focus exclusively on what end consumers need today and what they'll need in the next 10 years. My first quarter in the commercial real estate business centered around finding my value in myself and learning to find the value in the assets I wanted to buy. This is my first edge principle: find your value in the deal and in your skills. Principle 2, innovate to gain an edge, was at first a necessity as I worked to learn about real estate investing. It wasn't until later that I recognized the pivotal role of creativity and finding my own niche played in my success. I consistently struggled with principles 3 and 4, stay the course to win, and never get too high, never get too low. Their importance didn't become clear to me until later on in life. Principle 5, real estate is a relationship game, became a core concept. I instinctively did this from the beginning, and it has enabled my growth at every step along the way. Principle 6, trust your instincts, helped me make decisions in clutch situations. But it doesn't mean just guess or hope it'll all work out. I had to do the work to gain confidence in my abilities before I could trust my judgment. Chapter takeaways. So commercial real estate has a place in every investment portfolio, and you can tune the risk associated with your investments by the type of properties or funds you choose. The power of commercial real estate and the strategy you can use with these assets is a combination of high average returns, passive income, an effective hedge against inflation, and the investments that are based on real, tangible assets. This strategy successfully took me from no assets to getting my first $10 million exit. Commercial real estate is one of the few career paths that allow you to achieve wealth with nothing but your creativity and drive. God, I love that one. Commercial real estate is a game that can be divided into quarters. Just like a football game, there's parallels in the strategies and opportunities that you have during each period. Evaluate other investors in terms of their level of sophistication. The 4 levels often correlate with the size of the deal and the amount of capital that they can access. The levels range from residential to small to mid-sized to large investors, and finally to institutional investors such as REITs and private equity funds. Thinking about other investors this way will help you build relationships and find partners and mentors who have goals in alignment with yours and skills you want to acquire. Think deeply about your investment goals and project their effectiveness on your future to understand the vision you have for your life. This will help you refine both vision and goals to achieve what you want. Once you've identified your vision and goals, visualize, reinforce, and revisit your vision regularly. Make this a practice, a habit, and it will help you stay on track and provide motivation. First quarter, my story. So this part of the book is where I am going to share how I grew up, my story, where I came from, how I achieved some success, and it's different than in the written book. The editor and the publisher changed some of the story, just watering it down a little bit, which is okay. But this is the one I wrote, and for the Audible book, since it's my book, I want to share it with you. So I'm going to now read my own story in my own words. It's a little more raw, and it's not really based on full real estate education. It's more about my process of growing up, evolving, and becoming a better human being. If you don't want to listen to this, skip to the second half and we get into real estate. But this is the story, and I hope you like it. So I wasn't born into any money, and my parents weren't in the real estate industry. Growing up, I could always feel the underlying feeling of fear and scarcity revolving around the idea of money, but I really didn't understand why. I just knew everybody got really tense when the subject came up, and we never really discussed it. The only time we did is when I wanted to buy something, and they'd explain, "We don't have the money, so go work hard, go earn it," which is a valuable lesson to learn. But as high school was winding down, the advice was, if you want more money, go out and work really hard to go get it. You got to go trade your time for dollars. Even as a child, it was clear to me that money was controlling my family instead of my family was controlling money. So deep down, I knew I didn't want to live a life fueled by fear, so I decided to figure out how to take control of this force that seemed to be running everyone's life around me. Luckily, my childhood wasn't all about money. As a kid, I loved being outside, constantly playing sports, doing anything I could do to be outdoors. I was a high school athlete, and I put my heart and soul into wrestling, track, and football. For a brief moment, I thought I had a chance at playing at a higher level, like the NFL, and that was pretty much a joke. And after midway through my junior year, I figured out that no matter how badly I wanted to be an elite athlete, the deck of genetic cards I was dealt subjected me to being just another short, slow white guy. So I came to terms with my athletic lot in life, knowing I'd never really be the best at any sport, but regardless, I loved the adrenaline rush of the competition, the intensity of it all, just being in the arena, battling to win at all costs. I figured out if I was going to have any success on the track or the mat or the field, that I had to try to outwork all the other guys on and off the field, maximizing whatever little advantages I was blessed with. I had little short bursts of quickness, a low center of gravity, a good amount of strength, a lot of endurance. I guess I'd be a poor man's Julian Edelman. Because I was a little bit smaller, a little slower, and not as naturally talented as the better athletes, I developed this chip on my shoulder that gave me this extra fire and this fight inside me. Of course I got beat, but many times I pulled off wins by playing to my strengths, where other guys that were obviously more talented than I was able to hang around long enough where when it came down to a pure guts battle, they'd gas out. Sports and training left an indelible mark on my character and heart. I learned how to lead by example. Don't say it, do it. Once people see you're willing to do whatever it takes, they respect you and they follow you. I realized if your heart's not truly in it, then go the fuck home. You can't half-ass anything in life. If you do, you're only wasting your time and you're wasting everyone else's time around you. And lastly, no one player is more important than anyone on the team. I don't care how great someone is. If they bring that prima donna attitude in the locker room where their ego is more important than winning, then you might as well kill the culture of the organization. Those attitudes are a cancer that no matter how beneficial that player is in the short term, it must be cut out. So when we moved from New Hampshire to Nevada, which is a suburb of Las Vegas, we lived in a working class, lower income area of town. I saw a lot of guys making mistakes and throwing away their lives by making bad choices. I look back and I see how close I was to making some really dumb decisions myself, ones that could have been irreparable and done damage to my entire future. Luckily, I made it out in one piece and I didn't hurt myself or anyone else in the process. My parents really did keep me on track, and although I hated the discipline, I can see how they got me out of that trap of a dead-end life that the majority of the other kids fell into. I love the guys I grew up playing sports with. This blue-collar attitude we all grew up around, and it translated into how we played the game. We might get beat by the rich preppy schools, but by no means were we going to get disrespected. You go 100% on every single play until the whistle blows or the final seconds run off the clock. You never take your foot off the gas. If you're winning, you keep winning. Don't slow up. And you work hard to earn and keep your position, because if you don't, someone else will take it from you before you even knew what happened. I believe I took these lessons of work your ass off, nothing is given and everything is earned, and take pride in your game by never backing down into a lot of other areas of my life. At the time, though, I lived in this little world where I thought high school was how the real world really was. Wow, was I disillusioned. I was a popular kid, I was captain of the football team, I drank like an idiot at all the big parties, I was student council vice president, and I had a good-looking girlfriend. I was the king of my high school, but after graduation, it hit me right in the face that I wasn't shit in the real world. Nobody cares about your grades, your popularity, and least of all, a good-looking body. It started to sink in that I wasn't going to be a good football player outside of this little bubble that I lived in. So after college tryouts, I realized for sure I am not going to make it even to a decent community college team in California. So without football, for the first time, I had no real compelling goals, and I narrowed my choices to doing what everyone else was doing after high school. I could either get a low-paying job, I could go to the military, or I could go to college. And I thought seriously about each one of them. So I took the lesser of all the evils, I packed up my bags, and I headed to the cheapest school we had in Nevada, University of Nevada, Reno. Good old Wolfpack. This is where things started to really fall apart, and I learned the classic biblical lesson, without a vision, man will perish. College was the beginning of a 10-year journey fueled by one dumb mistake after another. College made no sense to me. I hated class. I hated the cliquey party scene. I didn't like my dorm roommate. I'd wake up to him blowing bong rips out the window above my bunk bed, telling me, "Hey, dude, don't worry about it." I felt completely alone. I no longer was interested in being funneled from classroom to classroom, forced to learn things that in my mind had no real application in my life. I was done with school. So instead of trying to find a way to fit in, looking outside myself for answers or validation, I decided instead to look inside myself and figure out my own answers. This is when I became obsessed with bodybuilding. I believed if I couldn't control things like being a premier athlete, or finding a niche in school, or getting a nice girlfriend, or finding a cool new group of friends to hang out with, I could just slap on the blinders and bury my head 100% in my daily training routine. Be a fanatic, Jeremiah. Train at the same time twice a day, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Sleep at the same time, 10 p.m. Eat only chicken, tuna, broccoli, brown rice, protein shakes every 3 hours. Fuck the money. Live as tight as possible. Walk everywhere on campus. Never go anywhere. Never buy anything. The other students on the 5th floor of the dorm, they'd search, where is that overwhelming smell of steamed chicken and tuna cans and broccoli coming from? They'd look inside my dorm room to see mostly naked guys' pictures all over my walls, wondering, is that muscular guy in room 506 gay? These pictures were just my inspiration. I wanted to create a vision to have the best physique I possibly could create. I'd wear these sweatsuits to bed so I could get as lean as possible. I bought a set of those little blue posing trunks and I'd pose in front of my closet mirror. I used grimy tanning creams to darken my skin and I'd go to these tanning beds. After a few months, I could see the veins climbing up my stomach, my arms and chest, every muscle becoming defined and outlined like a lean slab of beef wrapped in cellophane. My indulgence or dessert for the week was just 1 tablespoon of peanut butter before I went to bed. By week 10 of my 16-week pre-show intense training routine, which ended up with the ultimate goal of competing in the December Las Vegas bodybuilding show, I'd find myself each night constantly dreaming about food. I would see and feel myself eating this massive stack of chocolate chip waffles at Blueberry Hill, indulging in the melted slabs of butter on top with gobs of maple syrup dripping all over them. I'd wake up sweating in a panic thinking to myself, oh my God, you fucking blew your diet. I just fucked the whole competition. You ruined it. This training, it has to be perfect. All this work is wasted. Fuck! Looking back, I had no idea what I was doing when I was building a real nutrition and training routine. And now, knowing what I know, I was doing things very wrong. I started to break down physically and mentally as I starved myself towards the end of the training regimen. I couldn't get out of bed. I was sleeping at least 12 hours a day. After training, I barely had enough energy to walk back and forth to the few classes that I actually went to. Finally, less than 2 weeks away from the big competition in Vegas, I completely broke down. I couldn't fucking take it anymore. I just lost it. I could not sleep. I could not think, I could not focus, I was paranoid, and my body was always either extremely tired or fucking wired off the wall. I'll never forget how hungry I was one night. I honestly have never had a stronger impulse for anything in my life. It was 3 a.m. and I told myself I just need 1 cheat meal, 1, to get through all of this. Oh boy, well forget it. Once I gave in, I ate non-stop for 2 full weeks. Being in Reno, you have access to 24-hour casino diners with the cheap food that lure in the gamblers. So that night, I ate 5 large entrees, steaks, seafood, chicken, and 3 massive desserts. After it all, I had 8 spotless plates piled up on the table in front of me with this drunk, goofy-looking grin on my face, and every time I kept ordering, the waitress said, "Are you sure you want to order one more?" And I ate it all. But deep down, I felt horrible because I knew I broke my own word and I didn't follow through. I couldn't count on myself, and now I'm not going to be able to finish what I worked so hard for. I had that momentary pleasure of food and then the waves of crushing despair. The competition went right out the window. Done. In my mind, I fucked everything up. I worked extremely hard for almost 16 weeks, and yet I'm a complete failure. I blew it. Not following through, getting this close, and then letting it fall apart so fast caused me to lose confidence in myself and think back on all the things throughout my life that I didn't follow through on, big and small. Then I made the mistake, as so many people make, I took that idea that I didn't follow through or succeed in this one area of my life, and instead I slapped this "I'm a fucking failure" label on every part of my life. I believed I was no longer this kind of person who could follow through with anything just because I failed at this one thing. And this belief became a self-fulfilling prophecy, causing me not to follow through whenever things got really tough. I'd rationalize it all to myself. My mind would whisper thoughts of, "You know you can't count on yourself. This is who you are. You're a fucking failure." It was almost as if my mind took over, constantly saying, "You can't beat me. I'll always put you where you belong. Don't you ever forget it." After that, I tried to feel better about myself by bouncing around, trying to find a social group I could fit in with. I considered joining a fraternity. I did for about a full day, and then I received a call the next day at 6 a.m. from some head broski guy saying, "Hey, come clean up the dorm room after we partied for Phi Beta blah blah blah." I let a long silent pause fill the phone line, and I thought, "Jared, do you really want to do this? No fucking way." So I didn't. I promptly hung up the phone, never going back, never talking to any fraternities again. Next, I tried joining the rugby team. These guys were absolute animals. I played a few matches and I never fully understood the game, but I took all the confusion and frustration out by fearlessly hitting anybody in front of me, and they loved it. I realized really quick that running around with shorts up my ass in 10-degree weather, getting pounded on a frozen field by 200-pound massive guys was definitely not sustainable. I actually liked the guys I played with. They were real honest, solid guys, but I could not keep up with this intense playing schedule. Win or lose, you better be ready to consume a ton of alcohol right after the game, and this is just as important as the game itself. You don't want to see what happens when you mix together massive athletes who give absolutely no fucks and love pissing contests. This is a formula for incoherent, belligerent, violent, macho, competitive, hilarious, weird behavior that once it gets going in the group and you're anywhere close to it, it's going to knock you on your ass just like you were hit by an avalanche. Needless to say, I didn't play for long. But then once again, after I quit rugby, I had that little voice in my head reinforcing the negative belief. There you go, Jeremiah. You don't follow through again. You're a quitter. You're a failure. And at the time, my grades were garbage because 1, I almost never went to class, and 2, I had very little interest in doing any more papers, tests. I had very little interest in doing more papers or tests that had no application to anything important to me. But the failure still fed into that self-defeating belief. Jer, you don't follow through with what you start. You really are not succeeding at anything. Here you go, another failure. Keep it up. After that freshman year of college, I just couldn't go back to Reno, so I ended up quitting school and I headed to New Hampshire to work manual labor for my father's paving company. Working those dreary, cold fall-winter days in New England stripped away all the bullshit about my ego telling me that I'm not good enough, or I don't know what I want with my life, or I should be more successful than I am right now. I started to turn off all the static, and I began to think deeply about what I was really going to do with my life. What do I really want? Not what my parents want for me, not what TV, movies, and music tells me is cool, not what I should be doing at my age or what my friends are doing. What the fuck matters to me? When am I going to take responsibility and go out there and live a life where I believe I'm doing something meaningful? Finally, my mind was open. I was able to accept that I didn't know it all. Actually, I didn't know anything. How I was thinking surely wasn't serving me, so it was time to figure out a better way. I sought out non-traditional educational products by almost hypnotically buying a Tony Robbins course I randomly saw while flipping through channels, stopping on the QVC networks. I saw this powerful guy who cared and helped the victims of 9/11 process their individual tragedies. He was helping them channel that suffering and the pain into this new empowering belief system that gave them the strength to honor their loved ones by stepping up and taking care of the people they love and they care for, and even taking care of other victims. I didn't know what he was doing at the time, but unconsciously I knew I needed to straighten out my own life, so I'd stop sabotaging myself by making poor choices because of all these unresolved inner conflicts I needed to deal with. I drove around in my little Chevy S10 pickup listening to his CDs over and over, talking out loud to myself, yelling, working through all these silly exercises. Through this, I actually started to take inventory of my life. Instead of focusing on how much of a fuck-up I kept telling myself I was and replaying all these times I failed over and over in my mind, I started to ask myself these questions. What am I good at? What am I grateful for? What can I do to add value to others instead of just worrying about myself all the time? What do I like to do with my time? What do I want to learn? I was determined to go find what it was that interested me and gave me a sense of meaning and purpose. Plus, I started to understand that freedom and growth were my highest values, so working a 9-to-5 job, having to take orders from someone the rest of my life was absolutely not going to happen. After figuring out that I had so many gifts, like my health, I have a loving family, all the opportunities and advantages just growing up here in America, I started to feel better about my life. I realized I really enjoy communicating with other people and solving problems creatively. I want to understand why people do what they do. Why are some people really rich and others are just middle class and still others are extremely poor? As I thought of career prospects, I knew whatever I decided to pursue must make me financially independent. I was not going to be a slave. So not only did I want to be financially free, I wanted to play the game where the stakes were high and the rewards would change my life. Plus, I wanted to do something fun, something that was different every day, something where I would never stop learning, rather than hating my life because I chose to do something geared around the sole pursuit of money. I thought at one point I might want to be a nutritionist, designing training and meal plans to help athletes, yet I couldn't see how I was going to make any money out of that and get out of the rat race. So I looked at any opportunity I could find. I checked out network marketing, stock trading, or marketing products online. At the time, it was eBay. There was no Amazon then. And these seemed initially promising, yet in my eyes, I ended up thinking they were just gimmick businesses or businesses where I just didn't have the skills to be a great marketer. I thought, I'm 20 years old. I'm probably going to spend the next 20, 30, 40 plus years working. So I better work towards building a business that's time-tested, something that's easy to understand. It doesn't have too many moving parts where it's sustainable for me to manage and doesn't take any money to get started. So throughout this book, I want to give you the benefits of my experiences in life and in real estate without you having to bear the bad consequences, the lost deals, the lost money, the lost energy and sleep. So if you're in the same lost, lonely place that I was in college, and I still fall into from time to time, then you're exactly where you need to be. It may not feel like it, but you're right on track to persisting towards your goals. This is an important place to be, and it helps define who you are and what you'll become as a human being. I felt this darkness. I know you'll make it out of it, just like I did. Qualities of a disciplined investor. Throughout these stories, I learned key traits that help me be a professional investor. So forget the money for a minute. If you want to be a successful investor, 1, you have to like playing the game, and 2, you have to want to have a drive or motivation to be good at it. If you're doing this just for the money, in my opinion, it's just not going to work. We all need cash, but there has to be a level of enjoyment in the game if you want to continue to grow and get better at it. It's very competitive. Only the strong survive out there. Plus, you're going to spend a large portion of your life working, so why not enjoy it? Even get fulfillment from it. Strive to do something that challenges you, something that makes you more creative, a better communicator, more talented in all aspects of life. You're going to be faced with huge challenges along the way, and if you don't have that determination, the will to move forward, then you're going to give up and never make it. You got to know why you want it. and you gotta love it in one way, shape, or form in order to get what you want. Self-control. For an investor, the number one thing you must have control over is yourself. If you can't do this, meaning you can't trust or count on yourself, you're never going to make it far in the competitive world of business or investing. It's inevitable. Over time, your emotional swings will bury you. You, the investor, are the biggest asset or liability in any deal. You can't be too focused on just the money. This can come back to haunt you. For example, in Las Vegas, I've seen a lot of experienced investors lose everything by getting greedy, trying to sell always at the top of the market. They turn down opportunities to sell high because they think if they just wait a little bit longer, they're going to be able to sell it even higher. This kind of greed usually doesn't end up going well. You should be in control, not the money, not the market, and not your emotions. Now, if you have the necessary knowledge and experience and control over your emotions, you'll most likely be able to buy low, sell high, and later reinvest the profits into another opportunity rather than letting greed and fear get the best of you. It can be extremely taxing on your mind, your body, and your emotions. It's integral that there be healthy relationships and teams so that way you can keep a level head. Mental emotional discipline. The cardinal rule of real estate investing is to never fall in love with a deal or property. Like anything you want in life, you can't allow yourself to get too emotionally attached to something you desire. Sellers, brokers, or potential capital partners can sniff this out and they feel your desperation. Once that happens, it's over. They'll take everything they can and squeeze it out of you, sucking all the benefits right out of the deal. The disciplined investor sticks with his fundamental rules and focuses on his strategy, no matter how enticing a unique opportunity looks. He or she doesn't stray too far from their realm of competence. And then, of course, they must have the guts to put their money where their mouth is, stepping up, stroking a large check, and following through with their plan. Ultimately, this is an inner game. Invest in your mindset and skills first. As the famous Art of War quote goes, every battle is won or lost before it's ever fought. The commercial real estate investing game is won in the preparation and the planning phase, not by recklessly going out and making moves that you don't have any understanding of. You need a clear intent and a specific outcome in mind that you're trying to achieve. These are the lessons I had to personally go through in order to get my shit together and get some level of success. Background. My roots in business. So growing up, I absolutely knew I could not work for anyone else. My grandfather, he was of French-Canadian descent, Georges Boucher. He always had his own businesses. And from what I heard, his father immigrated from Montreal and ended up working in a shoe factory in Nashua, New Hampshire. This was my dad's father, and at first he was a door-to-door vacuum salesman at the 50s and 60s. Then he had a mobile dry cleaning business, and then finally he ended up with a nice flower shop that him and my grandmother ran for 30 years. He was never afraid to tell you what was on his mind. He was a real loudmouth guy that offended some people. But from what everyone tells me, he was one hell of a salesman. He ended up dying with thick calluses on his hands from years of hard work, but no assets or cash in the bank, leaving my grandmother to depend on the support from her children, and mostly my father, since he's the only one who built some wealth through his business. In the same small town of Litchfield, New Hampshire, my father started a paving company in the mid-1980s. I was 5 years old, and he was in his late 20s. My father's first love was his business and not my mother, so inevitably they got a divorce. My mother's love is learning and science, so she decided to pack up the little dark blue Chevelle hatchback car we had with 2 cats and a 120-pound black lab dog named Damien. I used to ride him around like a horse when I was a little kid. And we took the drive across the country and moved to Las Vegas, Nevada so my mom could go to UNLV and be closer to her parents. So my father would fly me back and forth to New Hampshire every summer, and I loved working with him and his crew of laborers, and I couldn't wait till I got big enough so I could actually go be part of his business. Learning the value of hard work. From the ages of 12 to 21, I spent my summers pushing wheelbarrows, raking walkways, and shoveling the 400-degree hot top in and out of the old, tired paving machine. I'd come home exhausted, full of grease, too tired to shower after working a week of 10 to 12-hour shifts, only to wake up at 6 a.m. to do it all over again. It was hard work, but I still love the smell of diesel and fresh paved asphalt to this day. While working beside my dad, I learned that just because you're the owner of the company, it doesn't mean you're too good to do whatever it takes to make the company successful. If there's a driveway that needed to be swept, he'd grab a broom and help sweep it along with the rest of us. Put your head down and work hard and don't worry about what you look like. There's no such thing as, it's not my job. You figure out what's needed, then you contribute in any way you can. As I got older, though, I noticed my dad's business didn't give him any freedom. He and my stepmother worked day and night, weekdays and weekends. He spent a lot more time working than any one of his employees, and I wondered, is my dad a slave to his business? He works every single day, yet some years the business makes very little, and he's only able to take out no more than a decent salary. I saw this and I knew I didn't want that for my life, but these two guys were my role models and I knew I'm going to be a business owner. Get out there and figure it out, young man. My business journey began the summer after my freshman year at college. After my unsustainable year flirting with bodybuilding and then rugby and trying to join whatever social group that would have me, I quit college and I moved in with my dad. I needed a way to survive and make some money, and for the moment, my dad's company was the only job I would ever take. While rummaging around my father's attic, I found a bunch of his old books, and then I stumbled upon this classic audio cassette program called No Money Down by Carlton Sheets. I'm sure you can remember these moments when things just shifted in your life, moments when your destiny took another direction. Now, as silly as this sounds, this was one of them for me. I finally found a way to take control of my wealth, my future, and my life. I now have access to the key to the door that guards the riches from everyone else. I was hooked by the idea that I can actually buy real estate, I can own my own business, I can build my own wealth without having any money. This blew my mind. I think my parents thought I was crazy. Look at this kid. He reads some real estate investment course and now he's quitting college and going into real estate. I knew they were disappointed or maybe just worried or confused about my future, but I didn't care. It felt right and I was going for it. Getting in the realty game. It was 2001, I was 20 years old, and I finally had some kind of purpose and direction in my life. Now I have a reason to read, to learn, to study, to push towards a meaningful goal. So I went to work buying all the books I could find on real estate investing, starting with a simple residential 2 to 4 unit multifamily property investment book. I signed up at the local community college for the real estate licensing course. I read and studied during my breaks while I worked for my father's paving crew. After failing the real estate test 3 times and narrowly passing it on the 4th, I was on my way in business with a few $1,000s in my pocket earned after a long summer of manual labor. I began renting a cheap apartment near the university in Vegas, and I was ready to start my real estate investing career. The problem was, I looked like I was 14 years old and basically had no idea what I was doing. Once I had my real estate license, I was obsessed with the MLS listing service, looking at every cheap fourplex in Las Vegas I could find. Almost all of them were located in really, really tough areas, yet my idea was to live in one and rent out the other 3. The only issue was I didn't have any money, credit, or a job. I couldn't qualify for a loan, so I was stuck. I asked myself, okay, how am I going to be able to buy any property? How do I create something from nothing? On my personal balance sheet, I didn't have any cash in the asset column, but I did have a tenacious mentality. I was resourceful, creative, relentless, and persistent as hell, which started to pay off for me over time. It's not like I really wanted to be a realtor, but I needed to make some money to invest and just survive to pay the bills. I thought while I'm making money to pay the bills, I might as well learn the business from the realtor side of things. I didn't know anything about contracts, how to find properties for sale, how escrow or title works, and how to actually talk to different professionals in business. I was working to learn, not to earn, just like Robert Kiyosaki told me. In the desperate pursuit of any type of commission I could find, I ended up taking on odd requests and falling into some funny and weird situations. A no-money deal? I think I'm an investor? During my early attempt to invest, I found a rundown neighborhood next to the Las Vegas McCarran Airport, and I found a single-family home that was listed under $150,000. In the MLS, it listed that it had some type of rent-to-own or owner financing option available on the listing. So I thought maybe this could be that no money down opportunity. An old school realtor salesy type guy with a cheap suit driving a beat up Cadillac smoking a cigarette showed up at the house. He looked like Bridget's pimp boyfriend Lester in the movie Casino, if you've ever seen that. We walked in the dark and dingy home together, and there was this sharp burning smell of chemicals. I'd imagine it was meth, mixed with God knows what, probably shit, and this smell hit me in the face. I could barely see a thing, and there were blankets covering all the windows. All the bedroom and bathroom doors were closed. I had a pretty bad feeling about this place, but this realtor was determined to show me all the bedrooms. The first door he tried to open up was clearly locked, and he kept jerking on the handle, and then a bald Mexican guy with tattoos all over his arms freaked out big time. He popped right out. He was shielding us from coming in, and he was holding a crack pipe in one hand and some other substance in his other. Luckily, the cheap suit guy slammed the door on his hand and got the heck out of there. I still figured this could be a good opportunity to get a no-money-down deal, so we made the offer and didn't get the house. It's probably a good thing I didn't in retrospect. I did still actually look at this experience as a win. Even through it all, I said to myself, I'm finally looking at property. This means I'm an investor. I'm in business, baby. The upside-down business of being a realtor. Learning to be innovative and creative. If you're not familiar with the residential real estate world, I'll give you a little insight. The industry is full of non-professionals. Over the last decade, everyone and their mother got a real estate license, and most of them know nothing about real estate. So when I entered this realty world, I looked for advice from everyone in my office on how to do business. They told me I should hold open houses by lazily sitting at some random person's house on the weekend with cheap signs set up all over the neighborhood pointing potential buyers there. I took their advice. I made flyers, I put out ads in newspapers, and I even had a picture of my head on a damn bus sign in Vegas. I was spending tons of money and making nothing in return. Due to the fact I still looked like I was 15 years old, and the realtor thing really wasn't working out too well, I was going close to 12 months without getting a commission, and I haven't got paid one dime. Funds were getting really tight, so I begrudgingly resorted to show people who weren't even able to buy houses rental properties so I could get $500 or $600 to stay afloat. I thought to myself, if I'm going to survive in this business, I have to find my niche, and I got to do something different. So I spent $200 a month on a half-page ad in the Bugle magazine, a publication catered to the Las Vegas gay and lesbian community. At the time, there was only one other realtor in the magazine, so it worked. I did get some pretty unique phone calls from that advertising, though. No, Kalani, I will not be your boyfriend. This guy called me for 10 years to be his boyfriend. The timing was key because by the time I retired my real estate license in 2007, the magazine was flooded with other real estate agents. Learning how to take rejection. The gay magazine ad strategy only worked so long. I had to get out there and find business, not sitting back and waiting for something to happen. And during this period of my life, I had this deep desire inside to improve myself. I felt this uncomfortable static and resistance always playing in the background of my mind. I was insecure, I was confused, there were times full of anxiety and frustration. I was disillusioned by the reality of having to enter the working world day in and day out. I felt chained to a desk and a computer rotting under white fluorescent light. Tyler Durden from the movie Fight Club's voice kept ringing through my head. We're a lost generation. Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes, working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need. We've all been raised on this idea that we're special. We're going to be some rock star or movie god or athlete or multimillionaire. And I realized no one really cares what I want. I had to have some hard conversations with myself at these times in my life. A big part of me was angry because I felt I had no choices. You're an adult now go get a real job and earn a living to survive. What's the fucking point then? Why just survive? Collecting material shit trying to look good for people who don't even care about me. Why do any of this? To live a life of meaningless consumption, where money is your god, money controls me. Deep down I felt empty. Looking back, I was empty because I let the pursuit of pleasure rule me. I had a drinking problem stemming from high school, and most likely from my father's side of the family, that I didn't even really know existed and didn't want to acknowledge. Las Vegas is a special city, and I'm glad I grew up there, yet I've seen it bury so many people. Like I mentioned later in the book, if you can't control your emotions, you can't control your money, and I was completely out of control at all levels. It's hard to shine a mirror on yourself and truly see who you are as objectively as possible, as if you were a completely different person. And this book was my mirror. As I wrote this, I looked back at my 24-year-old self, angry and disillusioned due to this sense of entitlement. It wasn't that I was entitled to money or things. It was that I was entitled to being important, special, famous, talented. Why am I not being acknowledged for being outstanding? It sounds ridiculous as I verbalize this now, but back then I would think, so why am I not an athlete? Why am I not a singer or talented performer? So why am I not special or unique or really important? I had no status in the world and I was broke, and that's exactly how it should be. I haven't done anything to earn the right to be great or acknowledged for anything. And above that, why do I need validation and acknowledgement in the first place? I finally came to the realization it's because I didn't love myself or even like myself. I felt unworthy, shameful, and like a piece of shit. In all honesty, I kept running away from my problems and kept dropping the ball. There was always an excuse, a reason the job didn't get fully done. And every time I let myself or someone else down, I could just check it up as, you're a fucking failure, Jeremiah. Good job. Let down and failure. And this deeply affected my confidence. I could see it in my posture. I was slumped over and hunched over, and I looked dejected. I radiated this message, and really it was just scared little kid not willing to handle life's challenges, my own challenges. And this was an emotional roller coaster ride during this time of my life, in my early 20s. I'd make one step forward, then I'd take 2 steps back. It's hard to describe the contrast at that time. I would experience these immense highs, either making a big commission or a fee, and then I would go celebrate for days, drinking and gambling and clubs and sex, and I went off the rails. And then I would experience these dark, dark lows, the come down after the fun, or finally having to face my responsibilities and really be consistent and dig into my job and get things done. I finally had enough of all that, and it was time to actually take responsibility and take control of my life. So I looked for unconventional education, and I decided to throw myself into a self-help boot camp phase. I was obsessed. I went to Tony Robbins' seminars, Landmark Forum, Mike Ferry, Matt Ferry, Tom Ferry. These are all real estate trainer guys. Psy seminars. I read Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. I went on this spiritual meditation retreat in Medford, Oregon. I took Rich Dad, Poor Dad classes. I flew to a Scott Shield Commercial Academy seminar where they teach you the basics of commercial. I started reading Frank and Dave's boot camp courses. Then they teach you about mobile home park investing. I completely immersed myself into learning about my fears and my flaws so that I might be able to learn my strengths. And through this process, I started to learn that I had a lot of inner conflicts. I was battling demons, just like everybody. Like my father, I found myself living in the extremities, an obsessive commitment to exercise. Then it was drinking and partying. Then it was learning real estate and investing, all with the undertones of, I need success, now, 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 now. You just have to do real estate long enough to get passive income so you can be financially free and go do what you really want to do in life. Yet if you force me to answer that question, what do you really want to do with your life? I wouldn't have a clue what that really means. Deep down, I thought I'll do this for a few years and go do something else. And what I found out is real estate investing and mastery in general is an extremely long process. There's absolutely no shortcuts, and no amount of money is going to solve how I feel about myself. So I was able to learn how to be a much better communicator with other people and with myself. I started to be comfortable with myself and have empathy for other people. I started to have gratitude and realize how lucky I really am and all the real opportunities out there in front of me. I learned to be quiet and let go of trying to show people how smart I am or cool or impressive. Instead, I just let people talk and I shut up and I listened to what they said. And then I'd ask them questions and I'd want to actually learn more. I started to learn how I could help solve their problem or add value to their lives. I had to learn how to add value to other people so I wasn't just trying to get something for nothing. I was most drawn to Mike Ferry, who was a disciple of the self-help legend Earl Nightingale, and he preaches you can solve any problem in your life if you just prospect enough. He ingrained in me that if you don't get on the telephone for 3 to 5 hours a day and make 100 contacts to people who want to buy or sell real estate, you're a useless piece of crap and you didn't go to work that day. This was something I could take action on, something tangible. Jeremiah, if you do this, then you will get that. And this is the first time in my life that I started to take back control. Getting out there and talking to people was the only thing I knew when it came to real estate. It appeared to be the only way to grow my business since I didn't have any connections to people who wanted to buy and sell homes. I didn't have any money to do any advertising or marketing, so I just hit the phones as hard as I could. That course taught me to believe that no matter how much rejection I get, I'm going to make sales and build my real estate business. It also taught me to walk door to door, asking people if they'd like to sell their home or if they had any questions about what their home value was. I had this experience before in college since I worked part-time as an ADT security salesman where I'd walk door to door carrying a funny blue-colored sign and I would try to stick it in people's yards. I worked with all these different ex-cons and burnouts. We would walk the east side of Las Vegas, which is a really tough area, and I'd recite the same corny script over and over. It started with, "Hey, I got a small problem. I'm sure you can help me with it." And then it just got way worse from there. What it really taught me is this resilience to take rejection and still keep my energy up. I don't know if you've ever done door knocking, but if you get told no about 50 to 100 times, sometimes it gets you down. But I actually learned how to talk to people while I was selling, and then the more no's I got more excited. Most people were real hesitant about answering the door from a stranger in these neighborhoods. But when I did get the chance to talk to people, I tried to make the sale while a little annoying dog was barking or a massive dog barking behind this screen that was dotted so I couldn't see the person on the other end. I would just hear this voice, "Hey, what do you want?" And I would start with my script and they'd just shut the door on me. I tried to communicate and help the people get security systems, but they told me to get the hell out of there and quit wasting my time. But I did learn that if you do it enough times and you knock on enough doors, somebody's eventually going to buy. And some guy finally bought one, and I got a $600 commission in the year 2000, and I felt like I hit megabucks. Anything to make a deal. This is a crazy story, so listen up. One day I received a call from a guy with a really muffled voice. I didn't quite understand what he was saying, but I could decipher he was looking for rental property at the moment, and he may be looking to buy a home in the future. He said he owned a gym, and I could swing by it so I could go pick him up to go look at property. Since I was really into fitness at the time, I was excited to meet him because I thought maybe I could own my own gym someday. And when he explained the location, I thought, that's kind of an odd place to have a gym. It was on the east side of Las Vegas, very close to this seedy entertainment district of the Strip. I knew something was weird when I drove up to this really old, rundown retail strip center. It's actually called Commercial Center in Vegas. There was no windows and only a thick, large metal door at the entrance. I knocked on the door and a little peephole slid open. As soon as the big security guy let me in, he quickly locked the large door behind me. It was really dark, and I could hear this techno music bumping through the walls, and it was only like 2 in the afternoon, but it felt like it was an after-hours club. The large security guy walked behind me, guiding me towards the owner's office, and as we walked through the place, I saw men dressed in these tiny leather G-string underwear, sitting on leather couches or dancing on top of tables on poles. I thought that was really odd, but I was escorted into this guy's office and I would wait for the owner, and I looked around and I saw videos of men having gay sex and male sex toy boxes scattered throughout the room. And at this point, I was very nervous and wondering, how the hell am I going to get out of this situation? I don't know if you've ever saw that part in Pulp Fiction, but that's what I felt like. And I realized, okay, this is not a gym. This is more like a gymnasium in the archaic Greek definition of the word, where these naked guys are all over the place doing God knows what. So with this big metal door locked behind me, I really felt boxed in. I'd received so many invitations to sex parties or to join as a third partner with couples and relationships, thanks to that Bugle magazine ad. I was worried this guy was going to lock me up like a sex slave. A short little guy with a crew cut came towards me, yelling in a really weird, muffled voice. I thought, oh shit, he's coming. He's coming after me, man. I gotta break out of here somehow. Finally, he shook my hand, he sat down, he started talking to me, And then I realized his jaw was wired shut. He was muffling, saying, I need to buy a house. I need to rent a house. And he later disclosed to me that I guess his life partner had a disagreement with him with the business, therefore repeatedly punching him in the head, breaking his jaw in many places. Well, the man ended up actually being a nice guy, and I showed him quite a few houses, but he never ended up buying or renting any property through me. So it was a funny story, but after all that work, no paycheck came at the end of it, so I was stuck at square one. Man, I gotta get paid. Finally getting a commission. Things were looking pretty hopeless near Christmas of 2002. I had no prospects to buy or sell. I remember reading the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and I would scream out these exercises in my shower about what I was willing to do to get the money that I needed to survive. He talked about having this definiteness of purpose and this burning obsession, and I came to this realization that I am committed to this. I'm not giving up. I don't care what it takes, and I'm going to put that in the universe, and it's coming back to me. I already lasted a year without income. I can last one more year without it, too. Well, luckily, that day after Christmas, another call came in from the Bugle magazine ad. Richard and Graham recently sold their plastic plant floral business in Palm Springs, and they decided to move to Vegas for a fresh start. So they needed to buy a house ASAP. And where did they look? The good old Bugle magazine, and they saw that strapping young lad, the realtor that can help them out. So we looked at 30 or 40 different houses and continually made offers for a month, and one finally worked. I got my 3% commission, which ended up being about $6,000 after I split it in half with my realty office partner. But I got the break I needed. I could live the fight another day. Holy shit, I finally got paid from real estate. Bert the Gambler. So I had some momentum and I made my first sale. I started door knocking near the UNLV townhomes because the university was expanding, so I figured, okay, I could find someone that's lived there for a while and they might want to sell at a premium price. I said, hello, sir. I'm a local realtor that specializes in selling townhomes in the area. I wanted to find out if you ever considered selling. He said, hell yeah, I want to sell my house. And then he walked me in through his door. I was pretty shocked. There was at least 3 or 4 people on small beds and couches and liquor bottles scattered throughout his living room. It was an awkward situation, but I was just excited to be in there, and actually it was going well. He told me, my name's Bert. What the hell's my house worth? So I went back to the office and I figured out a price and came back and he actually signed the listing agreement. And I sold it in less than 2 weeks. He didn't even own a car, so he had me pick him up from the escrow company after the closing. I asked him, where do you want to go? He told me, drive me straight to the Sands Casino. He said he could cash the check there instead of having to go to the bank. Immediately, I knew I would never see Bert again. This guy was clearly a degenerate gambler, probably on his last legs. He took that last $65,000 that he owned, and I'm sure he had the time of his life. I suspect, though, he didn't live much longer than that after the money ran out. I realized I'm going to deal with some crazy characters in this business, but hey, it's best to just go with the flow. Don't make people wrong, don't make them right, just help add value because most value-add deals are going to be from the wackiest people. It was 2004 and 2005, and real estate was on the rise in the U.S. I invested right on the cusp of it. A buddy and I bought a house on a postage stamp-sized lot. It was a 4-bedroom, typical tract-looking home you'd find in Vegas. There were 5 guys. I rented all the rooms and even rented the master bedroom closet. But somehow we were smart enough to sell at the peak of the market. I received a check for $60,000 and I thought I was a millionaire. I called up all my buddies from high school. We went to Rum Jungle and we partied like animals. It truly reminds me of the scene in The Big Short where that stripper says to Steve Carell that she's buying her 4th house, and the investment analyst starts to look around and he can't believe what he's hearing. I thought the movie did a great job painting this picture of how crazy this economic time was in the country. After my party phase was over, I found myself in the house flipping game, just like thousands of other new investors were doing at the time. New loan products were being created daily. They had these 105% loan-to-value HELOCs, these home equity lines of credit where you could borrow 105% of your home's value, and these Nina and Ninja loans, where the lender didn't even verify the borrower's application. They allowed no income, no assets, no job, no verification. Oh boy, man, the money flowed. This caused U.S. real estate to explode in value. People were spending like they never did before. Their newfound access to credit was irresistible like crack to a drug addict. People just couldn't stop consuming it. Just like the Big Short movie, I remember specifically in Vegas going out and $100 were like 20s. Average people were dropping $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 a night at clubs. At the time, a part of me was wondering, where the hell is all this money coming from? Everyone was speculating. The residential investments I made didn't even cash flow, but they kept increasing in value, so I felt confident in what I was doing. Until I didn't. And it all fell apart. One domino after the next. First, some of the tenants started not paying their rent. They started leaving the houses trashed. I couldn't release the units. Property values were flattening out. I was using unsecured business lines of credit to pay delinquent mortgages and repairs, plus I was maxing out all my credit cards just so I could cover the interest payments on the homes. Disastrous. This was in the fall of 2007, and my real estate business was falling apart. The industry was so competitive and cutthroat, and I was honestly losing my interest for it. I was showing people the same homes over and over, and there was nothing that differentiated me from the thousands of other realtors at the time. This started my process of hitting rock bottom. I lost all my cash, all my credit cards, all the rental houses, the house I lived in, and I was on the verge of losing my car. And I could not lose my car. That was the only thing I had that could actually help me make money. I realized there is nowhere else to pull money from. It's all gone. Now what the hell do I do? This crash actually happened a few times in my life, but this one stands out the most. While I was driving down the Pacific Coast Highway in California on my way back from some self-help seminar, my mind wouldn't stop worrying about my situation. I was judging it. I was angry. I was frustrated at it. I realized my total assets consisted of a $50 gas card I got from my grandmother for my birthday, and then I had $50 in cash on top of that. I was down to about $100. Something hit me and I pulled over. I got out of the car. I laid in the sand in Newport Beach, and I looked up at the sky and I listened to the ocean, and all of a sudden I felt extremely free. I don't know how to describe this feeling. I figured, you know what? Fuck it. I got nothing left to lose, man. Whatever happens is just going to happen. I don't care what it takes. I am not giving up on this. And then I peacefully fell asleep in the sand. But then I woke up and I got back to Vegas and realized I was so lost. Now not having any credit or ability to buy any homes, I didn't know how I was going to dig my way out of this problem, but I did. I tackled one problem at a time, day by day. There are times in life when the pressure on you is really high, where the circumstances and the environment are not ideal, but you just gotta keep pushing towards your goal. Deep down you know, I gotta push on, I don't give a fuck what happens, I just gotta move forward, even when you don't even know why you're doing it or what your purpose is. Those are the moments when you're forced to make a decision. You're gonna lay down the bet, push the entire stack all in, move forward, or decide to back out and fold and walk away from the game. This is fucking life. These moments happen at least once every decade, and you have to face them on your own. No one else can do it for you. Only you know your way forward. It's only you that can decide to handle it, or you cower away and run. I believe you become a man, aka adult, when you decide to face problems and not run away. I ran away for a long time. I ran away from commitment, responsibility. No more. Even though I was broke, I felt I had to move on. I was done being a realtor. I got what I needed out of it by learning the basic rules of real estate, but I hated driving pushy customers around, ones who really didn't need to buy a house anyway. They were just casually joyriding, browsing at homes, and I was their little chauffeur. 9 times out of 10, they didn't even end up buying. I ended up buying them lunch. They weren't even qualified for the home in the price range we were looking at, and I couldn't stand it. I was done, and they ended up even actually going to another realtor's friend or family member and getting the sale with someone else. Aside from all that, I could tell that realtors earn a commission, but this idea was severely flawed. I knew I'd never get wealthy or make a legacy this way, as a realtor or any professional for that matter. No matter how much money I made, after taxes and expenses, there was never any left over. I believe if you're an employee, you will never be truly wealthy unless you invest. You'll pay tons of taxes and have very few or no assets. Ultimately, you're just trading your time for money. I couldn't see this system giving me any leverage and scale for my time and my business. So once again, I randomly found a real estate investment course to help me decide what my next path is. Second quarter, cutting the cord from residential to commercial real estate, moving from being an employee to a business owner. So as the economy was crashing, deep down I knew it was my time to move into commercial real estate. I remember exactly where I was, what time it was, and what I was thinking about in that moment. I practiced the proverbial burn the boat strategy, saying to myself, this is my path, I'm going to make it work. I decided to commit my life to mastering my craft, and I don't care what it takes. So through a random chain of events, I was introduced to 2 real estate education courses that helped put me on the right path. In 2006, I took Scott Shields' The Commercial Academy, and in 2007, Frank Rolfe and Dave Reynolds' course called the 10-20-10 Rule to Buying Mobile Home Parks. I knew commercial real estate was the ticket to differentiating myself in the real estate industry. And even better, it had the potential to help me escape the 9-to-5, slave to a desk, rat in a cage, and there was so much I could learn and so many directions I could go. So through my delusion, I felt reinforced by all the seminars and the Commercial Academy courses that I kept going to. I kept pushing on. I was using what little money I had to mail letters to retail, office, and industrial properties. I got a lot of calls from people who wanted to sell, but this was 2006 and 2007. The real estate market was white hot, and now looking back, it was definitely the peak. So property values were at an all-time high. I actually did get one hit, though, where an old-timer Vegas cowboy called me up and wanted to sell his property. He had a whopping 120-square-foot Statue of Liberty-shaped building on West Sahara for a price of $60,000. Now, yes, you heard that right, 120 square feet. Most people have bathrooms bigger than that in their house. But hey, I looked at the building and I thought it was the actual entire shopping center. It was just this little Statue of Liberty property right out in the parking lot. It was a cheap price, and I figured, all right, it's a good deal. So a friend and I put up what money we had, and then we convinced someone else to lend us the balance of it, and then we finally had our first commercial property. You got to check out this testimonial I did on the Commercial Property Academy on YouTube. Boy, I look young, and I was so green, but I was so confident. I thought I was a genius. After months of the property sitting vacant, we thought we might open a small pizza restaurant in the 120 square foot space. In hindsight, that was an absolutely horrible idea. Luckily, we leased it to Liberty Tax Services after I actually got the idea by driving by a huge blow-up Statue of Liberty, and then somehow I got a hold of the owner who started the Fortune 500 company in the headquarters in Virginia. When I got a hold of him, he actually remembered this site when he lived in Las Vegas, and that building inspired him to name the company Liberty Tax, so he signed a 5-year triple net lease with me, generating some income off the property. This was right at the peak of the market, so we put the property up for sale and quickly found a California 1031 buyer to buy it and pay more than double than we paid. I had my first commercial win under my belt, yet my options were pretty limited with $60,000 in my pocket. The win was short-lived because I felt like I was banging my head against the wall and getting no real results. I realized I wasn't going to find any more deals in an over-competitive, overpriced Las Vegas market. Plus, even if I did find a decent deal, there was very little chance I would have enough cash to even buy it. So I decided it was time to cut off all the other options by going all in or buying my first mobile home park. Vegas was limited, so I decided I got to go somewhere else. I'm going to have to search the country if I'm going to find the deal that's going to help me get free. It was challenging because I sounded like I was 18 years old, I lived all the way across the country, and I really didn't know what I was talking about. But I found my niche. Everyone was telling me, do this, don't do that. Well, why not? Why not go buy mobile home parks? I decided I was going to try to figure it out for myself. I had to start thinking completely different from the crowd. So the first thing that I did that was different at the time is I bought a national list of mobile home parks and self-storage owners. Now, it was missing a lot of data, but I was obsessed on this list, and I started looking up every owner one by one, measuring the size of their properties, finding their phone numbers, finding their age, and I noticed if they're over the age of 55, they're probably considering selling in the next 5 to 10 years or sooner. So talking to that owner first was the key for me to get that opportunity to buy before anyone else. Plus, I was able to build a relationship with that person, and I was able to structure a good deal that could be a win-win for both of us. At the time, no one else was making these cold calls, so I was doing something totally different. I realized mobile home parks and self-storage facilities are such good asset classes for a couple key reasons. First off, they're two of the few commodity-based pieces of real estate. What that means is these properties are composed of single boxes or spaces or units. There are degrees to how nice they are, but in the eyes of the market, it really doesn't matter. If one person leaves, another person will fill the space quickly. Because this is the case, I can quickly evaluate what a property's worth based on the size of the storage facility or the number of units or lots in a mobile home park. Now, there's a high degree of variability of what the price per square foot would cost or the per unit lot cost would be, but if I know what the rents are, if it's in good condition or there's a decent infrastructure, if it's in a quality location or area with higher rent rates, then I'm able to spot deals within seconds, giving me the speed and maneuverability I needed to grow the business quickly. With mobile home parks and self-storage, I know it's a box. I know a tenant's going to pay the market rent, and it doesn't matter if they're going to be month-to-month leases. If one leaves, another fills it right up. This attribute makes the business very efficient and very sexy. Once I figured out what I was supposed to be looking for, I was then able to quickly evaluate deals, acquire them, and manage them effectively. Scale creates wealth. And I can use the leverage to build up scale so I can own tens of thousands of these units with relatively small office staffs and with relatively few on-site managers. In contrast to the ease of storage units in mobile homes, it's extremely hard to quickly evaluate an office property, industrial, or retail property because there's so many variables affecting the value of the space. It's highly contingent upon the length and terms of the leases, as well as the creditworthiness of the actual tenant. There's a lot of different construction variables inside each tenant's individual space. They have very specific build-out requirements or roof heights or power supply demands, and if they leave, it's really hard to replace them. In my eyes, it takes a lot of time to generate value on these types of assets. So I thought, this is my ticket. I don't have good credit, I have very little money, but I'm going to find some of these mobile home parks to buy. The beauty of America, baby. I started with just a phone, an old shitty laptop, and a couple lists on paper. It was just me calling and grinding on a phone list for years. I called and called and called. I dedicated a decade, and I sat in a fucking chair more than I ever want to with a headset on. There were times when I literally rolled out of bed in my small one-bedroom apartment, put on my headset, grabbed some caffeine and coffee with my girlfriend next to me, and I just started talking to people. We worked the hell out of that list, and my staff does to this day. They keep finding the names, the addresses of each owner so we can contact them directly and be first to talk to them about their property. As you can imagine, this was an extremely slow process. There were roughly 40,000 mobile home park leads and 40,000 self-storage leads in the country. That meant 80,000 total properties I needed to research. It started very slow in 2009, but after calling 300 days straight, I was able to find one guy who would sell his smaller mobile home park in rural southwest Minnesota. Pipestone, actually. I flew in through some intense turbulence on one of those smaller planes, and it was during a blizzard, and I was seriously questioning, how bad do I really want to buy a mobile home park at this point? Well, the guy ended up selling the property, which I made a fee of $10,000 on, and then I looked back on my tax return, and I made $10,000 in the year of 2009 total for 300 days of work. That was it, and I lived off of it. So after making that money, though, I realized, okay, this year was not a waste. I kept in mind the lessons from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I kept studying and focusing on the fundamentals of Dave Reynolds' mobile home park courses. I started to understand how to look for red flags on properties. Private utilities can be a money pit if you're not careful. Small towns have limited upside. Cramped mobile homes in tight little parks cannot be replaced. Owning the mobile homes and renting them to tenants is your last possible option to fill your mobile home park. You want to own the land. Land lease communities is the best investment model. I held my resolve and I told myself this was going to take some time. I got to be patient, and I had to be willing to face the rejection. I was tired of not following through. I was willing to pay the price. I wasn't going to run away from my discomfort any longer, and most importantly, I was working to learn, not to earn. I was learning how the business works and building something I was responsible for. I owned it, for better or for worse, and I was determined to take pride in what I was building as my life's work. I needed a better plan, so I called up Dave Reynolds. He was the guy that created the mobile home park education course I read a year earlier. I asked him specifically what he was looking for in a mobile home park and would he consider partnering with me if I found him what he was looking for. I said I'd like to find a way I can add value to his business. I told him, I'll go find you a good deal. And once I did, all he had to do was pay me a referral fee. And he had nothing to lose, so he said, all right, go find him. Now I had a partner with experience that I could learn from, and I had a crystal clear target that I was laser focused on. So with a credible, knowledgeable, capitalized partner, I could start to earn some cash and get out of the deep, dark debt hole that I got myself stuck in. Once Dave saw I was sending him 5, 10, 15, 20 deals a week, he started to realize I was serious, and he began teaching me the nuances of what to look for when buying a good mobile home community. This led me on that 10-year adventure of scouring the country, meeting with mom and pop owners in the middle of nowhere, scraping together small, medium, and large mobile home park deals by whatever means possible. His lesson was, if you don't solve someone else's problems, you won't make any money. The only way to get rich is to add value to others. As Dave and I worked together, that started to sink in. If sellers want to save on capital gains taxes, I had to show them how, through selling the property with owner financing, would help them do that. Or if the property wasn't quite worth what the seller was asking, I would have to find a happy medium by doing my homework on the rent comparables, ensuring I could step in and be able to do the unwanted task and reassessing and raising the rents. In order to add this value, I finally figured out how to communicate more effectively. I started to relax, and after a year or two of calling the same sellers, starting to build their trust, they were becoming more and more open to selling to me. After hundreds of offers, a few of them actually did want to sell their property in order to get a strong retirement income and defer capital gains taxes. It was shocking. People started to actually say yes after so many no's. Now I was on my way to building my business, owning and managing my own properties. I just had one problem. I don't have any money and I don't have any credit. That means I had to figure out how to get the equity portion of the deal, meaning the actual cash needed, so I could close and execute on my plan. I needed to find a way so I could personally buy these properties rather than always searching for a partner. So I worked hard and I used my 3 to 6% referral fees to stack up capital so I had some cash to invest in myself. Al's house. Well, because I didn't have any money, I had to figure out a place I was going to live. And soon I found a foreclosed home I could stay in, pretty much for free for quite some time. Years before I was a realtor, I sold a home to my friend who actually bought it as a second home and lived in Minneapolis. He gave me a key. He wanted me to go in and check on it, making sure it was maintained, it was landscaped, there was no squatters in there. Well, I realized that no one was there and I didn't have a place to stay and I didn't have any money for rent. So I figured I'd move in the back of the pool house. I was able to practically live there for 6 months for free. But I ended up calling him because I didn't want him to come home and I'd be taking a shower in his house. And I finally explained to him, hey, it's been some tough times financially. If you don't mind, I can pay you some rent and I can still watch the house. And he was a super nice guy. He agreed it wouldn't be a problem and he was happy to have me around. Well, within a few months, I did run out of the rest of my money. I wasn't even able to pay him anything, but he allowed me to stay. I was able to pay a little bit of utilities. And I was completely broke, but I was pretty lucky because I had a place where I didn't have to rent a storage unit. And I lived in a really nice home with a pool. It overlooked the entire strip. There was a beautiful view. So for being broke, I had a pretty damn good lifestyle. After getting over the initial nervousness of living in someone's house and they didn't know I was there and securing my lease, if you want to call it that, I had the ability now to go out and build the business where I didn't have many expenses. At the time, all I had was a cell phone bill, a small power bill, a $430 a month car payment. So everything I needed to pay for, including food, was under $1,000 a month. I mean, I was living lean, but I knew, okay, you can handle this. So from that point on, I shackled up to the computer and I just kept calling mobile home parks and reading books. For 3 years, I barely left that house on Minuet Street in Las Vegas. I mean, I had no money, but honestly, I did not care. I felt pretty good about my life. I mean, I was going after my goals. I felt like I had something compelling that I was achieving and progressing. Once in a while, I would go to a bar with friends or have a few drinks or meet a couple girls a couple times a year, but I didn't have much of a social life. It was a pretty lonely time, but it was also a pretty freeing time. It changed who I was as a person. I shut out the entire world and I let go of the anxiety of trying to fit in. I didn't care about needing a girlfriend or having money in the bank, having cool clothes, or having a cool house to show off, or even going on vacations. It didn't matter. All I knew was I was going to learn this business. That's it. And I was going to be an expert, a master of my craft. I was not only going to make money, but I was going to be able to play this game at the highest level. So with all my free time in the evening, I started really studying and opened up my mind. I started learning about history, economics, sociology, psychology. I watched hundreds of documentaries. Hell, I even wrote poetry a couple times and performed it. 1, because I got my heart broken, and 2, because I wanted to express myself. The isolation actually gave me time to go inside and see the bigger picture of my life and open up my worldview. I'm glad I went through this part of my life where I had to suffer, I had to struggle, where I couldn't go back to my parents or I really had anyone to fall back on. This was critical for me to transform and really elevate myself and appreciate what it takes to make it in business and to transform and become a bigger person, a better person. So all the cold calling finally started to pay off. After a couple years, I was able to start making $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 referrals when I would sell these mobile home parks to Dave Reynolds and his funds. I started to save my funds. This time, I am not blowing my money. I still had horrible credit, but I was able to start getting ahead for the first time in a decade. I wasn't going out partying and blowing it like I used to. I knew what I wanted this time, and I was going to be smart about it. I learned the valuable lesson that money does not come easy, especially in a down economy. People tend to forget this. When you're in a good economy, you can blow money like there's no tomorrow. Since I failed my bodybuilding show, I needed to do something, some athletic feat during this time that I felt proud of. Plus, I didn't have any money to go to gym, so I just started to run a lot, 10, 20, 40 miles a week. It helped me process what was going on in my mind, and I could think about where I was in my life. So I said, okay, a marathon's the goal. So I started to put more and more hours out there on the road, and eventually I got injured, but this time I wasn't going to let it stop me. I learned how to train effectively, and then I recovered my knees and back, and I got ready for the marathon where I had to get up at 5 a.m., and it started at 6 a.m. This was the very first Las Vegas marathon, and it began right in front of the Mandalay Bay, right on the Las Vegas Strip. So as I walk out to go get in my car in my apartment complex, I noticed that my little red BMW car is gone. I realized my only last possession was taken away, and it looked like a tow truck driver got it. I said, no fucking way, man. I thought to myself, how am I going to do this marathon if I don't have a car to get there and start the race on time? So I ran over to my good friend's little sister's unit. She lived in the same complex as me, and I'm banging on her front door at 5:30 in the morning on a Saturday. Apparently, she just finished her college finals. She was still up partying with some half-naked guy in the background, and she looked at me and she's like, what the hell are you doing at my house? I told her that I need a ride right now. Literally, like right now, put a robe on, get dressed. I have to get to the Mandalay Bay. She was really cool about it. She jumped in the car with me, and there was like 10,000 people in the front of this race. And we're trying to drive and wave through the people, and she can't park, and the cops are yelling at her with barriers saying, get out of the way. I open the door, and I just start running. I get out of the car, and the race begins. I could see the fireworks going off above my head, and she didn't even stop the car. She just drove around the corner, busted a U-turn, swerved through some runners, and I just kept running and started the race. I ran that sucker in around 4 hours, and I was so damn proud that I actually started something and I finished it. Isn't that the way life works? If you want to find excuses not to do something, you surely can. There's always something that's not going to be ideal, an obstacle, a challenge, someone's birthday, a job you hate going to, a family member who doesn't support you, the economy's in a recession, sky-high interest rates. All these conditions can be perceived like obstacles that are going to stop you from your goal. But if you're obsessive, when you're passionate, when you have that burning desire, you just want to find a way to get around them or go through them or go under them or ultimately just fucking find a way to get it done. Don't count your profits until the money hits the bank. While calling all the mobile home park properties, I always kept my eyes out on any park owner that would have the possibility of carrying a mortgage or a contract for deed. I couldn't get a commercial loan, so this was the only way I was ever going to be able to buy a property by myself. As I'd be talking to the owners, I'd even try to push it, asking if they sold their property, were they going to need all the cash, bite the bullet, pay the huge capital gains check to the government, or instead, would they consider taking payments and the gains over time, allowing them to make interest on their equity and defer the tax? I know it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse, but I called so many owners year after year, they can still remember my name to this day. They said, "Hey, are you that Jeremiah kid from Las Vegas? And if you owned a mobile home park from 2009 till about 2019, there's more than an 80% chance I called your house and I talked to you, probably more than once." I'm pretty sure I was the most prolific deal maker in the mobile home park space, procuring more deals than anyone else in the mobile home industry in the entire country. I'm still proud of that to this day. It's not often that you could say that you can do something better than almost anyone in the country. I don't know how many people were actually doing it at the time, but I still was the best. While I was doing all those calls, I met an old guy named Ron from Oklahoma. Guy had a real big belly and a gruff attitude. He always told me, "Don't call me," and would hang up on me. But over time, the guy actually started to like me. I kept calling him over and over, and he said, "Okay, I'll consider selling." So I flew out to Oklahoma and I met him to do a deal. He wanted to meet at his house, so I walk in there and I notice cockroaches running all over the place. This guy was a heavy guy, and there was chips and crackers and cookies and candy and soda all over the place. Every single bit of counter space was covered with snacks and soda. I'm sitting on the couch and I look down and there are these black little specks all over me and all over the countertops and floor. And I notice it's mouse shit everywhere. I could see it in the carpets, on the tables. It was nuts. The house was a mess. Literally all over the place, mouse shit everywhere. I was able to handle the smell, and in the end, he was a really decent guy, and he did the deal with a young guy like me where clearly he could see I didn't have a track record, I didn't have a lot of experience, I might not know what I'm doing, but he liked me. I was the only one that could get through his gruff attitude, and he decided he would carry the mortgage with a low down payment, and I was able to make payments with him over time. I still didn't know how to really operate a mobile home park, so I brought Dave Reynolds in as my partner. We owned the deal together 50-50, and we turned it around. We did everything we were supposed to do, and I learned how to really improve the asset to make a profit. We put the property on the market, and we immediately sold it to a couple from Utah, and we were going to make a $200,000 profit. Within a few days, I was going to make my first $100,000 on a commercial real estate deal. Well, the day before the closing, I'm running on the treadmill in the back of my office at the Las Vegas Athletic Club. I look up and I see the ABC nightly news on the big screens that you can watch while you're on the treadmills, and then it says, "Terror hits Lone Grove" in the tagline. As I'm jogging, I make a funny face and I go, I own a mobile home park in Lone Grove. Then the newscast cuts to live helicopter footage of my mobile home park after it's been annihilated by a tornado. It hit that trailer park so bad, the mobile homes were literally thrown in the air, tangled up in between the electrical lines. 30 of the homes were destroyed completely, and it killed many people in the community. I felt extremely bad for the residents, and it was a horrible tragedy. Luckily, Dave was a great partner and came in clutch. He helped me come up with a plan, and we could get a solution to help some of the residents get into new homes or at least get some of the insurance money so they can go find another place to live. I also was on my last leg financially, and this was devastating. Just by circumstance, at the time I was reading the biography of Sam Walton. There was a story in the book that explained right before he opened up his first Walmart store in Arkansas, the night before the grand opening, which he worked years saving up his money, his time, he found the space. There was a story in it that explained when he opened up his first Walmart store in Arkansas, the night before his grand opening, which he worked years of saving, finding the space, getting the business model ready, a tornado hit it and destroyed it, wiping out all his inventory and his entire business. He explained it set him back almost a year before he could put together the resources to get his next store. So I thought to myself, okay, Sam Walton did it. He took the loss. He went back to work and he started his own business, and they're one of the biggest businesses in the world. I can do this. I'm going to find my next park. So ultimately, I never made any money off that deal. I was about a day away from making my first $100,000 of profit, and then it vanished away like it didn't exist, especially after a year of work. But at least those investors ended up buying it for what we at least owed, and that way I wasn't still responsible for the mortgage or the debt. After the sale, we paid off Big Ron. He was happy. He knew there was a tragedy, and he was scared that he wasn't going to get paid his mortgage, but he got the cash, and even though it didn't work out as an investment, he actually ended up becoming a good investor in the future. Well, to wrap up that story, about 2 weeks later, I'm listening to Howard Stern on the way to go into the office, and he does this daily news skit where he reads the headlines and then he makes comments on them. And he says, "Did you see that mobile home park that got destroyed? What type of idiot is going to buy a mobile home park in the middle of Oklahoma?" Well, thinking to myself, driving in the car, I said, that idiot was me. And for 10 seconds, I actually felt I was famous because Howard Stern called me an idiot. Things don't always appear the way they seem. There's so many bizarre and funny stories dealing with these unique property owners. One that really blew my mind was when a business partner of mine named Matt Riccadella, still one of my best friends to this day, we went out to Lubbock, Texas to meet a 70-year-old woman who explained that she was ready to sell her mobile home park, and on the surface, it looked like the numbers were good and this was going to be a great deal. We hopped on a plane and we went to dinner with her and her son at a family-style Mexican restaurant, and we hit it off with great conversation. The next morning, we drive out to the mobile home park in the rental car, and we pulled up next to a pickup truck where we see her head pop up from the lap of a man in the driver's seat who ends up being the maintenance man, and it looks like she just dipped her nose in a powdered donut. She had so much cocaine on her face, we thought it was actually a joke, but it wasn't. She was talking a mile a minute, and her maintenance man were completely whacked out of their minds. As you can imagine, that office visit went really well. As we're trying to decipher the rent roll and the profit and loss statements, we had no idea what she was talking about. In the end, the place was a hellhole, and she owned all the mobile homes, and she was a true slumlord. There was tons of nefarious behavior going on in that park and way too many repairs. The place was a dump, so we decided to pass, but still couldn't believe this sweet old lady owns a mobile home park in the middle of Texas and has a massive cocaine addiction. You can't make this stuff up. The right way to run a business. Early on, while trying to sell residential real estate, I read the classic book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it just clicked. The book taught me about how the rich think differently than the poor and middle class and showed me my family's mistakes. My father and grandfather never invested in real estate. The real estate market in southern New Hampshire has more than tripled or quadrupled in value since the 80s. My grandfather could have bought properties in the 50s and 60s at pennies of what they're worth now, yet he never took the chance. I looked up to both my father and grandfather for being business owners, and I tried to model their obsessive work ethic. Because of them, I knew early on, I don't care what I do in my life, I just know I have to own my own business. Make my own way, build something for myself. That was a good lesson to learn, and thanks to this book, I knew the formula to make it work. I made a promise to myself that I won't let my business control me, I'll control my business. The one constant investment activity I could see made true wealth over a lifetime was income-producing real estate. I could easily see buying it and owning it decade after decade, creating generational wealth, real lasting money. I could imagine with this money, I can escape the chains. I'm no longer a slave to the financial system. So like Rich Dad Poor Dad illustrates, I'm able to build my own pipeline in which a lifetime supply of water will continuously run rather than wasting my days carrying buckets of water for the rest of my life. I knew I was through wasting my life with maintenance, earning a paycheck. Instead, I was building, learning, and creating something that would last a lifetime. That's when it finally clicked. Now there's a fire inside me. Now I have a real reason to work. Now I have a reason to get excited about business and get up every day. Every morning spent as a real estate investor, there's a new opportunity, a new journey ahead of me. As corny as this sounds, you're on the high seas looking for treasure. Our modern sea is the telephone system and email. You cast the net out there, you look for clues, you listen for little hints. This will get you closer to find that gold. As my mentor Scott Shields says, all it takes is one deal, one time to change your life. Some people can't handle the lack of structure though. Others, like myself, I thrive off the creativity, the incongruity, the lack of structure, the fast pace, the multitude of problems thrown at me, forcing me to wear different hats, be diverse, deal with chaotic and wild personalities, deal with these awkward, weird conversations, and then follow through with being strong in my energy and finding that strength. I love the creativity available to an investor in the business, the creative offer and the partnership structures of a deal, the creative financing, the terms, the true art of the deal. The tools available and the combinations you can align allow you for so many options to put together a solid winning deal for everybody. It's not a win-lose, it's a win-win. I'll highlight how I got into deals as clearly as possible so you can use the leverage and the resources that you have in order to buy your first deal and increase your return on investment for all future deals. Set one goal at a time, Jeremiah. Come on now, just follow through. If you can't control yourself, you can't control your money. And I couldn't count on myself in the beginning. I was way too hard on myself, setting massive goals and never achieving them. When overwhelmed with stress, I was too easily lured into escaping through drinking or hanging out with the wrong people. I wasn't dependable, and I wasn't following through with anything in my life. I started to see how these choices were showing up. One particular moment stands out vividly, and I finally said, I've had enough. I am sick of being a victim. I'm sick of running away from these problems. I'm sick of all the bullshit excuses. And most of all, I'm sick of being broke. Enough is enough. After years of almost no dating, I finally landed one with a beautiful Brazilian girl I met on MySpace. That goes to show you how long ago it was. We went to this popular Greek food festival in Vegas. I had $20 in my pocket, and I remember the entry fee was $18 for both of us. We're walking around looking at the good food with all the different vendors, and she spots her favorite style of this buttered corn. I didn't have enough cash on me, so I pulled out my debit card, and even though I knew there was just a little bit of funds in my account, I thought that I could get the card approved, but of course, I kept trying to run it, and it kept getting declined, and it got declined again and again. And I can remember her voice as she scoffed, saying, "You've got to be kidding me," in that sharp Brazilian accent. And she rolled her eyes and looked at me with pity and disgust. She looked at me like I was a joke. Initially, my mind tried to lie or make up some clever excuse, but I finally couldn't do it anymore. I had no more excuses. No more loans from friends and family. No more credit cards I could open up and draw on. I just admitted I'd finally really ran out of all my money. I truly had nothing left, and I was really sorry I couldn't pay. I've never had that experience in my life. I was taught that a man always pays for everything for a woman. So things have been tight before, but this was a first. I couldn't even pay the tab on a date I invited her to for a fucking $3 piece of corn. I wanted to be the kind of person who was reliable, who could do the job and do it well, who could pay for his date's meal. So it was time once again to throw the ego out the window. I went back to the basics. I knew I was never going to go back to being a realtor again, and I wasn't going to do the residential house flipping business. I forgot about envisioning myself as a millionaire or some hotshot flashy investor. I just asked myself, Okay, what do I need to do to generate enough income in order to live at the bare minimum? This way I could work to understand how the game of commercial real estate investing really works in a way that I can get better over time. So if I just own one asset and I can get off the hamster wheel of life of running around chasing commissions to earn money, then I'll have some free time and I can actually figure out how to build this business. So I just told myself I need to do one deal, and I set my goals really small so I could get a win under my belt. I needed just under $3,000 a month to cover all my basics. I mean everything. My cell phone, my room rent, car payment, food, insurance, and still have a couple $100 left in my pocket to go on a date and pay for a dinner. I had to make this small because I used to make these goals really big, and I didn't really believe in my heart I could achieve them. So I could really see this thing happening. I had a plan, and I could see it becoming my reality. Getting out of the rat race, $3,000 a month. That's all I need. After partnering on a few deals with Dave, I started to understand the ropes of the mobile home park business, and I needed my first mobile home park that I owned on my own. I kept looking in upstate New York. I'd been struggling for a couple years working with Dave and earning these fees, but I really didn't have anything I owned for myself. I was fully committed to making the phone calls on my contact list, and I continued to make these calls where my family lived in the Northeast. I figured I could go out there and I could meet people that own mobile home parks while I got to visit my family on summer vacation. I found a lead in Watertown, New York, and I made the quick 8-hour brisk drive out to meet the park owners Everett and Verna. Nothing happened on that first meeting. I was able to build some rapport, get to know them, but Everett wanted $850,000 for the property, and after my analysis, I could only pay $600,000. There wasn't enough motivation for the sellers to meet anywhere in the middle. It wasn't until about a year later that I got the phone call from Verna in the middle of the afternoon where she said, "Oh my God, Everett's sick and she's scared that he's going to pass away and she'd be stuck with the property and she didn't want to own it or manage it." She wanted to do the owner financing so she knew that she'd have the retirement income she could live the rest of her life on. I knew this was my opportunity and this fit perfectly with what I was looking for. So I made the offer to Verna and I put $15,000 down and I was able to have her carry the other $600,000 on an interest rate. I scraped up $10,000 I borrowed from my father and I had $5,000 left in the bank, and I was able to structure the deal so that it actually became a win-win for both of us. I was happy that I could help her retire. She got 6% interest or $3,000 a month. And I was able to get $3,000 a month to cover all my living expenses. This was my dream. I envisioned it for so long, I finally willed it. I willed something into existence. I was the 100% owner of the property, no partners, no investors, just me. Well, I took the lessons that I learned from Dave, and I added tremendous value to the property and was able to pay my dad off within a year on the loan. It ultimately made me feel successful, even though I wasn't rich. It gave me that steady monthly income that covered all my expenses and took the pressure off me so I could focus, and I bought my time back. I could actually get my business going. This was a pivotal point for me, and it validated what I was doing. The important lesson for me that I learned at the time was stop shooting for the stars, focus on a manageable, obtainable goal, and start building on those foundational goals and stepping your way up to bigger goals. I could train myself to follow through with these habits if I got some small wins under my belt, and then now I could get some momentum to get through anything. Time to go off on my own. So Dave Reynolds and I, we had a great run in mobile home park partnerships. During that time, my bread and butter was being the deal sourcer, the wildcatter. We'd bought over 80 mobile home parks together. I made those guys a lot of money. I helped them build up a big fund. My job was to go out and find the deals, and his job was to close them and do everything else. By the end of our time together, I owned several mobile home parks with Dave, and I had an equity stake in a large number of those parks that he was managing. At the time, I really didn't know what Dave was doing or how he was doing it, but it's clear to me now that he was building a series of private equity funds. I'm now doing the same thing in the start of my third quarter of my career. Our partnership was taking place during his third quarter of his career, and I was still in my second quarter. I had to do what I knew best, and I had to add value. My role was the deal finder, It's easy for me to now find those other people to fill that role for me, and I train them to go find those deals, and I see the value that they contribute to helping build my business and grow in the private equity funds. During our partnership, I watched Dave deal with a lot of organizational challenges of building his team to help him keep up with the rapid pace of acquiring and managing so many mobile home parks in such a short period of time. In my role, I was constantly on planes and rental cars and hotels, doing site visits every other week, taking pictures, and building rapport by meeting more sellers. I'd help get an on-site manager set up, and then I'd hand it off to Dave's team, and they'd take over. Looking back, I did the right thing by staying independent. I never worked for Dave, and Dave didn't want to make me as a partner in his funds, and I wasn't going to build my own company by working in operations for his company, so sourcing deals was the highest and best use of my time. That allowed me to truly learn the business, build my own capital reserves, buy my own deals, and eventually build my own company. In 2015 and 2016, I found a few solid value-add deals in my hometown of Las Vegas. On the surface, they looked rough, and I knew they were going to take a lot of attention. The upside was I could be very hands-on managing these. I decided once again I'm going to go all in, investing every dime I've saved at that point, which was well over $500,000 in fees, so I could own 50% of the assets, still in partnership with Dave Reynolds. Within months after the purchases, I decided it was time to take control of my own destiny and build my own fully integrated company, including accounting, operations, project management, financing, and capital raising. Once again, deep down, I had no idea how to handle this growth. If I knew what was ahead of me, I might have been more intimidated by the scope of it all. When I left the partnership with Dave and I took on responsibility for every aspect of the business. However, I had always found a way to make it work in the past, so I knew I was going to find a way to grow and make it work in the future. There was a time when I went through this shiny objects phase. I tried building a couple of other businesses while sourcing mobile home parks. My good buddy Matt and I went out and bought a gas station. We got a liquor license. We got a gaming license. I tried to invest in a recycling company. These were all failures. They didn't turn out so great, but I learned valuable lessons on how commercial retail real estate tenants operate. I also learned what makes a good operator, someone who's hands-on with their business and knows their costs, has a process and systems in place to manage inventory and employees. I had no idea about these things until I actually had a business myself. From that point on, I made two decisions. Number one, avoid distractions and stick to my core competencies, skills, and goals of buying alternative commercial real estate assets. Number two, forget being a managing partner in non-real estate businesses. Those experiments wasted too much of my time, and there were too many moving parts. The mobile home park partnership with Dave Reynolds was very important to me. He's a solid guy, straight up, no nonsense. He actually reminds me of Bill Belichick. He has no emotion, but he's a deep thinker, and he taught me critical lessons. Don't buy old, run-down, crappy mobile home parks for low prices where they have bad infrastructure in the middle of nowhere. That might sound obvious, but it's appealing when you can get a good deal for a cheap price, but it's not worth it in the end. He also taught me don't buy mobile home parks with too many park-owned rental mobile homes. The cash flow is enticing and it looks good on the income statement, but there's too many hidden expenses in the upkeep of those homes. He taught me how to identify and avoid these nightmares. Ideally, you don't want to be in the home renting business. It works much better for the residents to own their own homes and they pay their lot rent. Residents who own their homes have the pride of ownership and they pay for the maintenance of that home. From 2008 to 2015, during my partnership with Dave Reynolds, I learned the basics of the commercial real estate business, and I started to acquire some real skills in the mobile home industry. At first, I didn't look at the self-storage business, and I didn't even believe in it. I saw some of my peers doing it, and it looked enticing, but then I thought it's just people storing a bunch of their junk and stuff. It didn't make any sense to me. That would change as I started to learn and understand this asset class. Doing an equity swap in order to get ownership. It was clearly time to be on my own, and I finally felt ready. I couldn't entrust a partner with the fate of my entire financial future, and calling the shots for myself was my goal all along. It was 2016 and I was 35 years old, and my proposal to Dave looked like this. Take the combined equity I built up in the Midwest mobile home parks, the ones in Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, and trade that equity, the 50% that I owned, so that I could buy out his 50% of the equity on all the Nevada properties. We agreed to a value of my total equity to be $3 million. Then I would use that equity to help me get a $10.2 million CMBS, or commercial mortgage-backed securities loan, from Bank of America that would pay the loans off that he held on those Nevada properties, effectively transferring the debt into my name. So this way, Dave would own all the Midwest assets on his own or in his funds, and I would wholly own all the Nevada assets myself. This strategy worked. I was able to qualify for my first commercial real estate loan, a huge step forward, and I could now finance my own deals. The irony is that at the time, even after defaulting on a business line of credit and a home equity line of credit with Bank of America, I could qualify for a $10.2 million non-recourse loan through Bank of America. $10 million loan. I couldn't even get a house loan, and they gave me a $10 million loan. However, I built up this track record in commercial real estate, and I had a large percentage of equity in the portfolio of assets, and the bank liked the assets. I wasn't so tied to the loan, and they ended up giving me this loan because they loved the collateral. The total buyout price was $13.2 million. My equity was the $3 million I obtained from the trade with Dave, and then I paid the balance with the $10.2 million loan that I got with Bank of America. Once the equity trade and the new loan went through, I owned a $20 million plus portfolio of assets, and I didn't have a clear idea how I was going to manage them at all. Dave had all the management systems in-house, and he'd always handled the property management of our assets. Overnight, I had 5 assets in Nevada, which were the bulk of my portfolio. I owned them 100%. 4 of them were mobile home parks, and 1 was an apartment complex. This amounted to over 400 plus units with some pretty rough and challenging tenants that I had to take over and operate. At the time, I had 1 assistant in the office. Suddenly, I needed to hire some staff, learn the management software systems, and learn every aspect of the management business. This was a long list, from leasing units, evicting people, installing a consistent maintenance plan, dealing with large capital repairs and improvements, reporting to loan officers who represented the Bank of America loan, and doing all the park's quarterly audits. The debt service on these properties amounted to $65,000 per month in mortgage and reserve payments. I can remember looking at that statement going, oh my God, this is a huge payment every month. My heart was racing, and I figured, okay, the pressure's on. Now I actually got to run these things. I'm going to make this thing work and really learn how to run mobile home parks. Exploring self-storage facilities. A few years after the Great Recession of 2008, the investment markets could see the self-storage asset class was extremely resilient. It outperformed all other traditional commercial real estate asset classes, including mobile home parks. In 2015-2016, prices of self-storage started rising due to increased demand from new investors backed by historically low interest rates. This was also happening in the mobile home park space, and as I write this book in 2021, the market value and the demand for quality, sizable assets are out of control. I started to sell off a few of my mobile home parks around that time, and I started to take a serious look at storage. Storage can have fewer capital expenditures compared to mobile home parks. The main CapEx, also known as capital expenditures, for storage is roofs and roads, and if those are done right the first time, they should last you for over 20 years. This meant, to me, predictable cash flow. Storage can be much less management intensive than mobile home parks, although it's not necessarily the full truth. Storage is a business, and it requires processes and systems, as any business does, but most importantly, due to the improved technology, the business is becoming more and more automated. Approximately 70% of my storage tenants never leave, so there's only a small percentage of turnover, and the majority of those are set up on auto pay from their credit cards. How glorious is it that the manager never sees the tenant to do any of the normal transactions? The lease is signed online, and the tenant almost never goes to the property to use their space. We rarely need to collect from tenants because we auto-debit their credit cards, And we don't have to put up with broken water pipes, domestic violence complaints, or issues with pets getting out of control, or some guy waving a gun at me because he doesn't want to pay his rent. This is an oversimplified and idealistic description of how storage works, but it's not far from the truth. In 2016, I did 2 storage deals. One of them really catapulted me into the business, teaching me valuable lessons what to do. The other deal taught me exactly what not to do in the business. The first deal we did in New Hampshire was on the border of Vermont, and that turned out to be the ideal location for storage, even though it didn't look like it on the surface. The deal I struck with Deb, the owner, led to an expanded collaboration that's still going strong years later. It's resulted in over $1 million per year in revenue in a small town in the middle of New England. Very little money down was required from me, and I built a significant amount of trust with the owner. But that's not the best part of the story. After the initial deal was completed, I met Deb's daughter, Diane, who's a few years older than me, and Diane didn't like her career in the engineering field, so she worked nearby in Keene, New Hampshire with an engineering company, and she noticed and watched how I grew the storage business with her mother, and a few years later, she was excited about getting into the business with us. And at this point, Deb quit her job at the post office, and Diane, who's really sharp with the operational and procedural mindset with her engineering background, quit her job, jumped on board, and became a full-time partner. They were both skeptical at first, conservative New Englanders, but they took a chance on me in the asset class. Diane took on developing an efficient, effective management system that truly makes the customer happy, no matter how they want to interact and pay their bills. One of the keys to this is a customer service phone number that rings directly to an actual person answering the phone. This may sound counterintuitive to the way customer service has evolved over many businesses, but it's been worth the initial setup and it's scalable as well. Diane knew her customers and found a way to incorporate technology where needed and good old-fashioned customer service where it's valued. People like to hear pleasant people on the other end, and they want to feel special, and they want the process simple, and she's been able to do that through those customer service agents answering the phone. That strategic partnership really launched me into self-storage, and I haven't stopped since. I took a risk, and I got out of my comfort zone with mobile home parks, and I had the opportunity to build a relationship with a person who opened up my world. We took on more projects, and I depended on Diane more and more as she scaled up the management processes. She's great at the management, I was great at the capital raising and acquisitions, so it was a perfectly complemented partnership. The other side of storage, the Winnemucca deal. So Dave and I had properties in Winnemucca, Nevada, and one of those park owners also had a self-storage property that he was interested in selling. The owner was in his 90s. I could tell the storage facility was really run down and wasn't being managed properly, but it was a decent size, over 50,000 square feet. It consisted of over 400 units, and it was in the heart of town right by the post office, and it was a good, convenient location. He was firm at his asking price of $900,000, and I agreed to his price if he agreed to my terms with no money down. He agreed to carry the full note at 6% interest-only payments for 6 years. Because I already bought his mobile home park, he trusted me and was willing to carry 100% of the financing because I'd already delivered on my word with the park. As part of the deal, I committed to making a minimum of $100,000 in capital improvements over the next 12 months. This included paving the facilities, landscaping, painting, upgrading the lighting, and a lot of other improvements like cameras and gates and the overall aesthetic appeal. He wanted the assurance that I was improving his collateral and putting in hard cash to demonstrate that I had skin in the game. This way, if things didn't work out, he was confident that I wouldn't just pack up and stop making payments to him, and I wouldn't leave a mess behind. I had true capital invested, and plus the assets needed those improvements. The property was a deferred maintenance nightmare. We set up the office with QuickBooks so managers would have good financial information and got good collections dialed in so everyone was on autopay. I put in big internally lit pylon signs, installed new LED lighting, gated it, paved it, painted it. There seemed to be only one reputable contractor in town, and I couldn't find any others who would drive 5 hours to Winnemucca, so with no competition, the one contractor's rates were extremely high. In addition, the paver graded the paving wrong, and the drainage went back into some of the units. Once again, wrong. The other problem was a competitor storage facility on the edge of town. The owner was older, from the World War II generation, and he almost had unlimited land where he could just keep building for years. He kept expanding without regards to the economics of the investment, and he didn't care. He just liked the business, and he kept his rates very low. This was in a rural area, and the population was limited. It was basically impossible to move the needle on the rates, and in an area like this where the competitor kept his rates artificially low and he had brand new units, he would never stop building. I could never raise my pricing. The best option for me was sell the property, and then that process kept running into problems as well. Big players in the storage industry wouldn't offer on the property. It was just too rural and it just didn't fit their box. The one thing the property had going for it was it did have good cash flow. So for a buy and hold strategy to get a passive income, long-term investor, it would be a good buy. So I spent over a year trying to sell the property with a broker. The manager, who also was a great person during that time, passed away right in the middle of escrow. At the last minute, Diane had to jump in, help manage it from across the country, and then continue to get the deal moving forward. It was in escrow 3 or 4 times with unsophisticated buyers because we were in such a small market. Interestingly enough, the market kept going up every time a sale fell through, and we could put it up for a higher price. This was during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, so plus we had all the operational controls that we needed, so that way we can continue to raise that price and improve the cash flow. The price went from $1.235 million to $1.75 million. By the time we were successfully done selling the property, an older doctor finally closed on it. So each time we put the property back up for sale, it was actually a blessing. The purchase price for me was $900,000. I put an additional $300,000 into it in improvements and still made a good profit at the end of the day, not to mention all the cash flow along the way. It was really relieving that a doctor wanted passive income and he could take on that property and he didn't care about adding value. He wanted to invest and get monthly income, and the property was ideal for him. It gave him $4,000 a month, which was still a 12% cash-on-cash return on his money, so it was a true win-win for everybody. The main lesson for me here is don't buy in extremely small markets that have no barriers to entry. If someone can keep building storage for days and you don't have that many people near you who are going to increase the demand, and you can never raise your pricing, you can never truly add value to that asset. I stay away from these small markets that have really low rates, and I'd rather stay in more suburban markets or more affluent markets where you can raise the storage rates. At about a decade into my real estate journey, as I entered the halftime of my real estate game, I was finally starting to understand how to organize all the scattered pieces of the commercial real estate puzzle in a way that actually made sense. I felt that I was becoming the person who I knew deep down I was born to be, a true leader. Selling my portfolio. Starting with the 5 properties I owned from the equity swap with Dave, I went on to acquire a few more mobile home parks. From 2016 to 2019, I continued learning how to do individual partnerships with a handful of investors I met at the networking groups. This taught me how to raise that capital so I could go buy my own deals. Typically, I met these friends through real estate investing seminars and built relationships and then partnerships with them. As I grew, I was running around doing more deals, and I wasn't able to manage all my internal staff. My mobile home park management practices were working, and I added value to those properties. In 2019, I realized that my return on equity, though, wasn't enough. All the income was going back into the properties. I didn't have much in the bank. I was getting less than $150,000 on more than $10 million of equity. So I had no return on equity, and I was spending all this money on the management. I was cash broke, real estate rich, and I needed capital, real cash. Where the economy was headed wasn't clear, and I didn't feel secure in that position. I needed to take some chips off the table. My staffing situation wasn't working out, and the management of those properties was driving me nuts. What I needed was a cushion of capital, of real cash for safety, and an opportunity to rebuild the company from the ground up with new people. With some liquidity, I could make the next move without the added pressure of buying and selling in order to stay afloat with all the costs of staff and the value-add projects. My pivot into self-storage. It was time to build something new. I could see others were having some real success in self-storage, and I wanted to pivot into that asset class. Mobile home parks helped me grow the business, but with the right operational partner, which I now had in Diane, I could invest my funds into storage, create value through development, and then build something that would last decades. I could see the trend was shifting where these suburban and tertiary storages were actually increasing in value. We had already gone from one storage facility to over 44 as I entered my halftime. So after realizing this, I went on a tear and I went out and bought 44 of these assets over a 2-year period. As of sharing this, we have almost 3 million square feet of assets, and we plan to build another 500,000 more in the next 18 months. It's funny to think about, but now I'm one of the top 50 largest storage owners in the country. But in order to get there, I ended up deciding to sell my mobile home parks in Nevada in 2019, and I netted $10 million. That was everything I owned, but it allowed me to transition to the next asset class and next opportunity. I was able to close down that current office, regroup, get rid of the staff, and go in a completely different direction. For me, this was a validating moment. I mean, all those earlier wins were great, but this was a significant milestone in my life. To really see myself materialize $10 million of cash, it elevated me in the business world where, 1, I was proud of my achievements, and 2, my plan actually worked. I was really excited that I actually got this thing over the finish line, and I was excited about the new chapter of my life. It was time to build a new company, and I was ready to take on that challenge. Halftime. As the great coach Bill Belichick would do, it's time to evaluate how the first half went and then make adjustments for the second half. Looking back, first and second quarter performance. In my first quarter, the residential real estate market was a stepping stone and a chance to work to learn. The importance of relationships and offering value to others started to become clear during this time. I made the same mistakes others did and got caught up in the Great Recession of 2008. That crash forced me to step back and reevaluate. It helped me recognize that my future was in commercial real estate, and I started in that direction. My vision lacked detail beyond achieving just financial freedom. At that point, I was still in the first level of the real estate game. In terms of developing my business, I had an idea what path would take me to my goals, but I needed to try some new approaches. My biggest barrier was a lack of capital, and I knew I needed a mentor. For passive investors, your first quarter should be about learning, researching investment options, and making connections. Determine what your vision is for the performance and return on your investments to help you choose the right ones. In my second quarter, I found a mentor in Dave Reynolds who helped me learn how to invest and operate mobile home parks. My value to him was building the relationship with sellers and evaluating potential deals. I learned so much about value-add investing and how to work with people to find a win-win deal. Later, as those referral fees became more consistent, I found ways to build some equity and cash flow for myself. The performance of self-storage facilities during the Great Recession really attracted my attention. I found them to be similar to mobile home parks in terms of value-add strategies, but with less overhead and management requirements. Finding a valuable partner in Diane to manage the self-storage properties was a huge win, and it propelled my success. Proving that always finding a win for everyone helps to build momentum through strong relationships. This happened because I always paid a fair price, treated everyone involved with respect and integrity, and made sure that the seller gets what they need from the deal. Many times this practice has helped me because I expanded my relationship base with every deal, and some of these sellers ended up being some large investors in the future. During my second quarter, I did an equity swap with Dave Reynolds to gain the outright ownership of the 5 properties. This event moved my company into level 2 of the game in terms of sophistication and scale. Property management became a challenge and exposed my weaknesses in my team. I went through some learning pains in finding the right people to support me. Before the end of the second quarter, I sold a big part of my portfolio to cash out some equity and get liquid. This also allowed me to start fresh and build a brand new team. My confidence in my abilities was rock solid by the end of my second quarter. I had real skills in sourcing and evaluating deals, plus a strong foundation in operations. It was a hard lesson to learn because I was so focused on growing the business and creating more deal flow that I didn't keep my eyes on operations, nor did I really understand the keys to operations and to staffing. So stepping back and learning that aspect of the business has given me strength and power so I understand moving forward exactly what's needed to be a well-rounded investor. If you're a passive investor at this stage and you're at the end of your first or second quarter, you've likely narrowed down the options of investing into one or two asset classes. You've tried out some funds and partnerships, and your vision has benefited from that experience. You understand much better what you want to accomplish and the returns you want to achieve from your investments. Looking forward, second half strategy. As I made a plan to move into my level 3 or third quarter of my investing, I decided to get into private equity funds, and I closed down my existing office. The first step towards that goal was to apply what I learned to build a new team of people who could help me move to the next level of the commercial real estate game. The right team is absolutely critical to scaling your investments to the next level. Again, relationships and aligning goals were critical to success with the team. As of writing this, I'm early in my third quarter, and I've created a series of private equity real estate funds that buys mobile home parks and self-storage facilities. Setting up private equity funds is the only way to take it to the next level of sophistication so I can grow my real estate investment company. This requires raising a significant amount of capital from others, period. First, though, I had to develop the legal structures to make it work and lay out the strategy for how the funds would operate and serve the investors. After that, I needed the strategies for how the funds would grow and continue to offer value to the investors, how to scale the funds, and how far I wanted to go in this process. For passive investors, the third quarter is about capitalizing on what you know works. Your network of winning options for partnerships and funds would be expanded. You're making decisions about reinvestment and possibly diversifying if you feel like you're going beyond your tried and true investment strategy. Fourth quarter is about keeping things going, but also enjoying the fruits of your efforts. It may also be about retirement and choosing what you want to do in retirement. If you've been an active investor so far, think about adding some passive sources of income to your fund retirement. This evaluation is a little different because now you want reliable passive income and you're less concerned with value-add potential. You may already own the assets that can do this, and it's simply a matter of choosing which ones to keep or acquiring full ownership of them. Planning in your fourth quarter is also the time to consider charitable donations and ways to give back to the community. My focus for giving back will be on providing or improving libraries and parks. I believe libraries offer opportunity to have anyone who wants to learn can learn. And parks can make the world a better place and should be available to everyone who wants to get out in nature. And everyone should get out in nature. You just feel better. As a passive investor, your fourth quarter will likely look similar to what I've described for myself. Make decisions about what you want to do in retirement and plan for steady income to support you as you move from decade to decade. Third quarter. Showtime, baby. Third quarter showtime. This is where I'm embarking now in my career. The third quarter is about applying what you've learned and achieving your goals as well as possibly setting new ones. Edge principle number 6, trust your instincts, or also known as trusting your gut. This is critical when I set my goals for myself for my future. If you got into the commercial real estate game earlier, or when you're younger when you reach your third quarter, you'll start benefiting from the hard work you put in during the first and second quarters. If you're in your 50s or later in age and you reach that third quarter, you may want to look for maximum leverage opportunities in healthy, reliable terms. Planning how to use tax advantages carefully will always help you with the velocity of your money. Many investors made their money in a business other than real estate and want to use their real estate to grow their wealth, diversify, and provide a hedge against inflation with real assets. These investments may be part of your retirement plans, and commercial real estate can provide all you need. Now, when I say retirement, I don't necessarily mean when you stop working. It's about taking advantage of the financial freedom you've achieved and restructuring your days to spend your time doing what you love. That's my goal too. The goal is freedom, period. Freedom is not to have to work your job or business every day to keep the money flowing. Freedom is to have the ability to do the things you choose whenever you choose to do it. Working because you want to, not because you have to. This is the kind of work that I want to do. This is showtime. For me, this is about putting together all the skills I've acquired, all the skills that I've built, getting out there and taking action and realizing the success. It took me a decade to earn those skills, and now I've earned the right to be able to play the game at a higher level. Critical goals for the third quarter. In 2021, I turned 40, and I've been in the game for almost 2 decades. What have I learned so far? Besides understanding the foundational role of relationships, the key to moving to the next level is hire talent. This is so important. I'm learning this every single day. Except at the very beginning, you can't do all of this yourself. Without good people in your organization, you'll never grow or scale your business. You will own a job, and over time, it'll become miserable. Whether your plans are to set up a family office or your own investment company, you have to have a team. You can still be involved, but not in the day-to-day minutia details. In the beginning, you may not have the resources to hire a team and vertically integrate, but as soon as you do, make this a priority. My goal now in my third quarter is to develop the business and train my team to run it for me. If I can save my time for the big decisions and strategic choices and possibly guide the business from afar, I can make sure things are heading in the right direction and be confident in my team to help me get there. If I'm so integrated in all the little day-to-day functions, I won't be able to see the big picture and make those good decisions so the business is successful. My first team was hired to help me grow in my second quarter, and they did that to a fair extent. During and after the sale of the mobile home park portfolio in Nevada, my staff was starting to burn out and we were growing apart. Because I was so focused on growth and acquisition, I didn't put the level of time and attention that needed to happen in order to have the operations, the management processes, the staffing, and the clear company standards in place. Again, I had to learn the hard way how to hire the right people, and it was clear that my first choices weren't going to make it for me in the long haul. One by one, either each staff member left to pursue their own projects or career goals, or they just fizzled out and were fired. For some, when they started to see big money coming in the company, emotions such as resentment, entitlement, jealousy, and greed started bubbling up. That's when I realized my goals and my employees were not aligned and never really had been. Now I can see at first I had no idea what I was doing in hiring employees. I simply needed help in operations, so I just found anyone with that background. That was a real weak point for me in my first and second quarters. This was a time of great overwhelm because after I found a deal, I negotiated it, I raised the money, I got the financing, I pushed it over the finish line. The last thing I wanted to do was focus on all the little details of the setup and the operations of my company. For years, I did everything with a shorthanded staff, hired new managers, established property management systems, got the new property management system in place by uploading all the tenant ledgers, taught the new manager how to use it, set up the accounting and QuickBooks software, set up and found all the new vendors, like the mowing guys, the plowing, the electrician, the plumbers, go out and get new leases and rules signed, and then I got out there and actually collected the rent. If they didn't pay, I'd put a lien on their stuff or I evicted them from the property. And a lot of this was just me and maybe a handful of people. It was extremely overwhelming. This was a lot, and both the company and I suffered. Frankly, a partner would have been the best solution at the time. Now I realize that limitation more clearly, but I had to go through that process to learn every aspect of this business, and I'm much stronger from it because of that. New partnerships, building the team. After the portfolio sale, I started from scratch. I hired 5 new people during the last quarter of 2019. This time I was determined to do it right. I would hire the right people, I'd treat them the right way, and I would run the company tight from the bottom up. Taking what I learned from the problems with my first team, I set about finding individuals with goals that would align with mine. I wanted my team to work with me and have skin in the game too, so my success would depend on their success. My first step in building my new team was to schedule interviews on New Year's Day. I wanted to see who'd really show up. The holiday was when I had free time, and it seemed like a good way to see if people were really committed and willing to show up on New Year's Day to go take the interview. These were my first 2 hires. Number 1, I had to get a personal assistant to help me organize my life. No longer could I keep up with all the little things in my personal life, and it just distracted me from the big picture. Number 2, a bookkeeper or CFO to keep track of all the property financials in-house. I would have to say this is the most critical aspect of having a commercial real estate investment firm. If you don't have your books right, your life will be a nightmare. A CPA is important too, but they're more involved in the tax planning aspects, which is critical in commercial real estate investing. Before I really focused on the tax strategy, I had to get accurate revenue and expenses on the day-to-day reporting. This consisted of day-to-day bank balance management, which is cash management, the bookkeeping and reconciling or classifying the transactions, keeping tracks of all accounts payable, paying bills and knowing when they're due, keeping the financials updated so I had a current balance sheet and income statement. This was important, so now I had a dashboard and I had metrics that I could measure so I knew the performance of the company and the assets. Bringing on team members as equity partners was a game changer for me. This ensured that they're motivated, engaged, they're bought in and committed, and this is exactly what we needed for the next level of growth. Every person on my team had an incentive and an excitement about the business, which ensured they were going to do the things that were necessary to get there. They sacrificed getting a large salary in return for an equity ownership position in the assets. This was my approach to finding engaged team members who had a partnership mindset instead of an employee mindset. And at the time, this was the right move. Now, finding these partners or these key leaders is not easy to find. Part of it was me needing to grow in sophistication as a business person, and that enabled me to attract the right people. And because my key leaders on the team are considered partners and they have shares in the company's growth, there also needs to be a clear hierarchy. This is important because sometimes these partners start to forget who is the lead. So it's clear that everyone needs to know who's the lead, who's the alpha, and then who is the supporting cast, and then what role does everyone play in the company. Each team member's partnership share in the company was a piece of the holding company or the assets. This would be anywhere between 2 and 10% equity in the deals. This is what they would earn over time on the equity growth of the asset. They didn't earn equity right away. They each must work 1 to 4 years to vest into that equity so that they're in it for the long haul. The best people will commit long term, and I have the confidence that they have the best interest of the company in mind in everything that they do because it's human nature. Incentives drive everyone, and everyone is driven by their own self-interest. If they're going to make more money on those assets, they're going to be more motivated to improve those assets. Bringing on key leaders and delegating now allows me to focus on the parts of the business that are meaningful to me. For example, I love finding deals, and that's a unique skill that I can bring to the partnership, bring to the company, and add tremendous value. Also, I love adding value to properties. I like learning about the construction, and I've been learning about it from my partner, Tim Wilkins. So, Tim, I grew up with in high school. We've known each other since I was 6 years old when I moved to Las Vegas. We parted ways after high school, but we had our fun, played football together, partied like crazy, and then had to go grow up in the real world. Well, 15 years later, he was getting tired of his construction job. I was really needing a partner, and my company needed the help in operations and construction. So we came together, and he just kept showing up every day and saying, "How can I help you out?" He never asked for money, never asked for a paycheck. He helped turn around extremely challenging problems on a lot of my mobile home parks in Vegas. And then eventually, I'm like, "Man, hey, you want to come on board and become a partner and work with me?" He didn't ever ask for anything and added tremendous value, and now he's a trusted partner and my right-hand guy. It's a great partnership because we have complementary skills. He understands construction, and he understands the metrics and driving operations and management. I understand the growth of the business, the finance side, the aspect of creating deals and creating partnerships and raising the capital. So we complement each other, and it's a great synergistic relationship where we make the company better. Through his experience, I learned the ins and outs of civil engineering, permitting and zoning, architecture, building codes, construction costs, construction methods, grading. He showed me so many things about construction that I now feel confident when we go into a new development project. There's tremendous upside potential in development, but if you don't understand it, you can get yourself in big trouble. So make sure you have someone that does understand it, or you hire a great general contractor or partner so you can utilize their skills. Currently, one of my focuses now is expanding or building on mid-sized storage facilities, getting them to 40,000 to 70,000 square feet throughout the suburban New England and Northeast regions. This can be a bit stressful, but I have Tim, and we go out there. We like working with on-site crews, paving guys, builders, concrete layers, industrial and building manufacturers, and general contractors. We're not physically out there working with them, but we're able to lead them, able to look at the budgets, the contracts, and make sure we got good, solid vendors out there doing the right job. It's been satisfying to be involved in making other improvements on the property, such as upgrading the office, the curb appeal, landscaping, signage, paint, the new naming and colors and branding and logo. It just feels good, and it changes the entire look of the property. It's a sense of pride when you can take an ugly asset and turn it around into a nice, clean, professional business where you provide good customer service and a quality experience for your customer. This team-centered mindset is where my head's at right now. I've completely shifted my mindset as a CEO, where now I have the team in mind before myself. I can't just go do the job. I have to lead the team leaders and communicate the strategy in order for all 70 employees to go out there and be effective in the business plan. My core strategy of acquiring value-add storages and mobile home parks haven't changed, but now I need to lead from a different perspective, and it takes a new set of skills for me to continue to grow the business. It's all about empowering the talent, clarifying the vision, dictating the key priorities, measuring the critical drivers that are going to get us to that ultimate goal. The next level, private equity funds. Why PE funds? Up to this point, I primarily worked with strategic partners to acquire properties. Each partner brought something different to the deal. Often the partners contributed skill or services, and our agreements were all customized for whatever the partner wanted. There was no such thing as a standard partnership agreement or a standard equity split. Each and every partner I've worked with enabled my success with their contributions. It was the creative financing and operations that gave me ownership control with minimal capital investment, but the customization of each property's ownership and management produced a logistical nightmare. Imagine keeping track of 20, 30, 50 different projects catering to different personalities and working with different accounting and bookkeeping practices for each one. I love the hands-on approach to commercial real estate, but I needed to step back from the details and benefit from some economies of scale. I needed to streamline and standardize. I was maxed out where I was, and I still wanted to grow. Private equity fund development is the best way for me to scale and move through the third quarter. In order to manage a private equity fund as a general partner or sponsor, I needed to get the organizational ducks in a row first. A true private equity company must go through the growing pains to establish a vertically integrated company that's capable of managing all the aspects of the investment process for their chosen asset specialty on a large scale. They must also establish an investor profile that serves the business, and they must be able to serve that investor because the investor is the customer. This is an important point because you raise the capital to serve the business. You don't build a business to serve the capital. Private equity funds can be used to raise large amounts of capital, larger than I was able to do so far, and therefore acquire larger assets and achieve greater economies of scale. With the new lean, efficient, and dedicated team in place, I could build a fund structure so we could go operate the business from the new funds and on a bigger scale. This was important to me because we started to buy deals at such a rapid pace. If I had to go out and find a handful of partners for every deal, it wouldn't have worked for the business model. I couldn't have walked each investor through each individual deal. Instead, I was able to raise a fund structure where the fund was going to buy the same type of assets with the same return profile, and I could count on that capital coming in rapidly. What are private equity funds? A private equity fund is a partnership usually organized as an LLC with general partners, also known as GPs, also called sponsors or syndicators, and then the limited partners, the LPs, and these are also simply called investors. Limited partners provide capital only. Private equity funds that invest in real estate can provide a passive option for investors to share ownership in real estate assets without the hands-on hassle of operating them. As a passive investor, you are an LP. And the GPs, they manage the fund itself, plus the acquisition, the operations, the sale of the assets, and the distribution of the returns. As an LP, in exchange for your capital investment, you reserve equity in the assets purchased by the funds. Typically, this is classified as preferred equity. How do investors benefit from commercial real estate private equity funds? Limited partners benefit from the returns, the tax deferral benefits from depreciation, and sometimes the appreciation at the sale, depending on the terms of the fund, from their own ownership equity. Private equity funds offer passive investors the opportunity for tax benefits and returns you could only otherwise obtain by actively investing in your own commercial real estate assets. Because private equity funds are privately owned and run, terms and management aspects can vary, and you must carefully read and understand the terms as described in the Private Placement Memorandum, also known as the PPM. As a potential investor, you'll get a term sheet, also called the PPM, that will describe what your return on your investment is projected to be. The benefits offered and how they're prioritized and paid vary from fund to fund. The two standard benefits of real estate private equity funds are a preferred return, also called a dividend or a preferred share, and a share of the depreciation. In addition, there's a potential for returns to be greater than the percentage of the preferred return, depending on the performance of the assets acquired with the fund's capital. This is normally the equity creation or the upside of the asset, where the LPs own a portion of the equity of that asset and they benefit in the appreciation. Preferred guaranteed return. Private equity fund limited partners receive regular returns on a monthly, quarterly, or annual schedule according to the fund's terms. My original funds issue a monthly check, which take more bookkeeping and paperwork than a quarterly or annual distribution, but investors love to see that check hit their account every month, and so do I. The preferred percentage limited partners will receive should be stated in the terms. Preferred means that those partners get their share first, as close to guaranteed as we can get in that investment. Never forget, there's always risk in any investment, right? A typical investment is $100,000, and the industry standard return is between 5 and 10% annually, depending on the level of risk of the assets acquired by the fund. So if the return is 10%, you would get paid $10,000 annually for the use of your money. The return does not pay down your investment. It's a dividend, or also called a distribution in real estate. The investment has a timeline, and essentially you cannot sell the shares in the fund. These are private equity funds. They're not public, so they're not liquid. You will get your capital back only when the assets sell and if the return is great enough to pay the capital back. This is if the invested capital repayment is included in the terms. In our funds, we do repay capital first, and then we split in the profits. Depreciation. Unlike a REIT or a real estate investment trust, it's possible to receive depreciation benefits from a commercial real estate private equity fund. In some funds, including ours, meaning you get a share in the accelerated depreciation according to your ownership percentage. This is extremely powerful, allowing you to defer paying taxes on your cash flow so you can reinvest those funds and continue to generate returns on your capital without the heavy cost of paying taxes each year on your distributions. Paying taxes on the gains severely reduces the compounding effect of growth. To be clear, deferring income tax by claiming depreciation as a passive loss is not tax evasion or tax-free funds. Depreciation is a tax deferral strategy. You're paying long-term capital gains rates on taxes once you recapture the value of the depreciation when the property's sold. Depreciation reduces your basis in the asset, that is, the price of the asset that's used to calculate capital gains at the sale. Every year that depreciation is taken as a passive loss, the basis of the asset is reduced by that amount. You do not have to be a real estate professional to benefit from the depreciation to offset qualifying passive income. Your accountant will address this each year at tax time, and if you change your accountants, it's critical that the information is transferred. As a side note, we offer all the depreciation to our limited partners or investors so they can utilize this benefit. Calculating gain and basis. Here's a quick overview of how to calculate your gain and recalculate your basis. This sounds complicated, but it's not. The big takeaway is that the amount of depreciation must be subtracted from the original or previous year's basis for each year depreciation is taken. This is why depreciation is a tax deferral. Your basis shrinks with depreciation, making your capital gain at sale larger. You take the sales price of the asset and you subtract it by the cost of the sale, like the commissions or the closing costs. Subtract that by the remaining basis in the asset, add back your capital improvements, and this will equal your taxable gain. I know this is hard on the audiobook. Your basis equals the property acquisition cost plus your closing fees plus your capital improvements minus accumulated depreciation, which could be straight line or accelerated. It's a lot easier to read if you get the written book. Why I'm sharing this is because it's important to understand your taxable gain when you sell an asset. If you've utilized depreciation, you're going to have a large taxable gain, and you need to know the formula to figure that out. I suggest reading my new book, The Money Edge, and this outlines the tax strategies that can benefit you as a real estate investor. Passive investing without personally guaranteeing the debt. Investing in a private equity fund, it will give you direct ownership of commercial real estate where you won't be involved with managing tenants or needing to risk your personal assets or credit by getting a commercial mortgage. Asset appreciation. Additional returns may be possible beyond the preferred percentage from the cash flow remaining after annual preferred returns have been distributed and also from the appreciation of the asset at the sale. With our funds, there's potential for recovering your original capital once we have a sale or refinance. Not all funds state the intent to return the initial capital, and it's somewhat rare, but it's how we run ours. With private equity funds that offer these benefits, it's possible to keep up with the heavy cost of inflation of your money. The fund buys hard assets and continues to grow in value, and when the assets are sold or refinanced, the equity investors get a nice gain on their initial investment. Building my first fund. I wanted to run my own private equity funds, functioning as a GP along with other partners on my team as GPs to manage the fund and the assets. This approach had multiple benefits. First, it would give me access to a larger source of investment funds. Second, it would streamline everything associated with the process of managing the partners. Plus, it would allow me to focus on my core strengths of acquisition and value-add strategies, as well as create economies of scale with vertically integrated operations and construction management. We've seen a major increase in demand nationally for mobile home parks and self-storage facilities, and our private equity funds aim to fill that demand. I invest my own money in each fund alongside with the other investors, so every investor knows that their goals are my goals. In May of 2021, I pushed myself and I raised my first $15 million in a fund. Since then, we've raised over $100 million in 3 other funds. This took time and effort, but now it's allowing me to scale very quickly. The process of raising money isn't very enjoyable for me. Who wants to go ask someone for a minimum of $30,000 or $50,000 investment? For many investors, the typical investment's $100,000 to $500,000. However, for me to get over that uncomfortable feeling, I think about the opportunity that I'm offering, where I not only offer great returns, but my expertise, my commitment to the business, the fact I'm guaranteeing the loans, and that they're getting the lion's share of the profits, it's a true win-win. So I believe in the value that I'm offering, and I want to convey it and share it to other people. I figured out this structure, and I work with some advisors, and now I got the fundraising vehicle in place. In simple terms, setting up a private equity fund involves these steps. Create an LLC partnership with the necessary general partner and limited partner structure. Create a 506c fund that allows you to solicit to people you don't know as long as they're accredited investors, and you can get them accredited through different websites or have their attorney or accountant send a letter that they are accredited. Determine what returns you can promise and create the private placement memorandum that describes to your investors what the terms and the returns will be. Be very conservative on these projections. I would underpromise and overdeliver. The next step is then to raise the money and deploy it to acquire the assets that will produce those returns. This assumes you have the in-house vertical integration needed to execute on the value-add strategies and operations that will be required. What that means is you have to have a team to go out and acquire the assets, manage the assets, improve the assets or build the assets, and then execute on the reporting so you can share those returns and share the updates to your investors. As of this recording, I've closed out my first 2 funds, and the funds have paid a preferred return of 10% along with the accelerated depreciation. We're starting to sell some of those assets in those original funds, and the returns are quite attractive. And now I'm opening other funds and deploying that capital into assets that produce the projected returns. This is still mobile home parks and self-storage, the bread and butter. We manage these assets and maximize operating efficiencies for these returns. Eventually, we'll sell and exit these assets, but one of the main features I like about a fund are some assets overperform, some assets underperform, but if you do the right things, you're going to get the returns in aggregate to your investors. In my fund, the sponsors or the general partners, they don't get any depreciation benefits, so all of the accelerated depreciation is divided up amongst the limited partners, and it's proportionately larger as a result. If you as a limited partner cannot utilize all the depreciation to offset passive income in your first year, it carries over and it can be used to offset passive income in future years. That depreciation benefit increases your initial return because the taxes are deferred. For my investment company's funds, Patriot Holdings, the third benefit after the preferred return and the depreciation is the repayment of the capital that the limited partners invested. This happens after the assets are cash flowing on top of the preferred return or when the assets sell. We will repay the capital, splitting the cash flow between the GPs and the LPs at their respective split. We're setting up structures for more funds. Some are focused on mobile home parks and others are on self-storage development. We'll open up these funds to investors once they're finalized. For more information on how private equity funds work and the legal requirements in terms of Reg D of the Securities Act of 1933 and the 506C exemption, refer to The Crowdfunding Myth by Jillian Sidoti. In general, if we're targeting accredited investors for our funds, we use verifyinvestor.com to verify that our investors are accredited. Investment options for passive commercial real estate investors, a discussion. Private equity funds are one of the few passive investment options in real estate that can offer investors depreciation benefits as well as a regular dividend or distribution income. They're just a couple steps removed from owning the property outright. As an investor, you own a share in it and are a passive partner or a limited partner in the private equity fund structure. In addition to private equity funds, you have a couple other options for passive real estate investments. Number 1, a REIT, also known as a real estate investment trust, and number 2, the crowdfunding platforms. REITs are essentially just another security, and many of them can be purchased on the stock market, although they don't have to be publicly traded. Their performance is tied to the real estate assets they invest in. However, beyond that, it's the same as investing in the S&P 500. REITs are usually focused on a specific category of properties. They do provide diversification compared to investing in corporate stocks. Their operation is dictated by a specific set of rules established by Congress when REITs were created in 1960 to make the benefits of cash-flowing real estate investments accessible to anyone. Here's a summary of the rules of a REIT. REITs must be set up as corporations. At least 75% of their income must be generated from real estate rent. At least 75% of their income must be generated from real estate rent or interest from the sales of real estate assets. At least 75% of the corporation's assets must be real estate assets. At least 95% of the corporation's income must be passive. Finally, REIT corporations must distribute at least 90% of taxable income annually to shareholders as taxable dividends. REIT shareholders pay tax on their dividends at ordinary income rates. Because they are shares, they can be traded. You're not locked into a long-term investment and can sell at any time. This makes them more liquid than most real estate investment options. You can invest in an individual REIT or a mutual fund that invests in REITs. Anyone can buy shares in a REIT on E-Trade or any other investment platform. These are the lowest tier and farthest removed from active investing. You receive returns in the form of a dividend, and you must pay capital gains tax on those returns. Some examples of the storage REITs are Extra Space Storage, Public Storage, and Life Storage. Crowdfunding options. Like REITs, some real estate crowdfunding sites will cater to accredited investors while some will be available to non-accredited investors. Each crowdfunding option has a specialty and their own terms, a minimum investment, the fees, and holding periods. They can run the gamut of alternative assets, core assets, and debt assets. They may direct funds into a private REIT or a private market real estate investment with higher returns than publicly traded REITs. The minimum investment may be as small as $500. They're not as liquid as owning publicly traded REIT shares, and they may have a holding period of 3 to 5 years or more. It's a relatively new option, opened within the last decade, and it's worth checking out. Thoughts on the economic climate. When I started raising funds for my first private equity fund, the economic climate was extremely competitive. Interest rates were at 2.75%, the lowest in America's history. I believe this won't change for quite some time. No one in government will want to be responsible for the country going into a recession. From this point forward, the U.S. will continue to print its way out of economic trouble. In the wake of the COVID-19 outbreak, stimulus checks were sent to the average consumer, and then there could possibly be a minimum income credit sent to all residents. More small business loans were made to keep business doors open. Since I was born in 1981, there have been many policy changes and shifts in Western culture's thinking that have led us to this point. In the 1980s, for the first time, people weren't as scared to cling to everything that they had. They were moving away from living with the deep-seated fears of going hungry that were prevalent in the World War II and Great Depression generations. In the 1980s, it was actually possible to have all your consumer goods you wanted without saving or worrying about saving. You could max out your house debt, your car debt, and your credit card debt. People could suddenly get credit and it exploded. Yet wages during the last 30 years have remained relatively stagnant, even with inflation. The divide between the classes will continue to get bigger, even with the abundance of information available to all. The rich will continue to get richer, the middle class will continue to disappear, and the lower middle class and poor will have to receive some type of subsidy to keep the debt train moving. Healthcare costs will continue to be a massive burden on people's individual finances and on our country's budget. The national debt is a joke and something that will never be paid. There's no real negative repercussion at this point to the U.S. economy by borrowing tens of trillions of dollars and tacking it onto an already massive national debt. These systematic issues all lead to inflation, not just in terms of consumer good prices, it will also lead to asset price inflation. Stocks, bonds, commodities, businesses, and real estate will continue to rise rapidly in price. When wealthy people earn income or borrow money, the last thing they prioritize is how many people they can hire. Their primary focus is on what assets can they buy. More and more people will be investing in income-generating or inflationary-resistant assets. There will be job growth and an improved standard of living for many Americans' lower middle-income class, but over time, companies will keep downsizing, automating jobs, and manufacturing offshore. This is globalization and the new world. This is the world in my third quarter, and it will shape my fourth quarter. Through it all, U.S. real estate is still a haven for the world's wealthy investors. The dependability of our property rights will remain, and as long as you can focus on assets that will have a useful place in the modern economy, the values of the assets will continue to appreciate rapidly. In this new generation, there have been so many shifts. Yet one thing we know is that more and more dollars will continue to chase high-quality assets and businesses. You must own real assets, and in my opinion, you must own quality real estate in order to have true generational wealth you can enjoy and pass it on to your family or promote the causes that mean the most to you. Next steps in my third quarter. I'm preparing to launch several more private equity funds with different asset class targets and my funding goals. Right now, I like small bay industrial properties that serve the needs of small commercial businesses and warehouses, and I believe that's going to have more of a demand in the economy. My funds are set up accordingly to the same philosophy I've applied to all my investments so far. I put some of my own capital into each fund, so every partner is investing alongside me, and I make sure my partners get what's promised to them. Building relationships and maintaining them with integrity and honesty has led me to this point, and I will continue to operate this way. What investors must look for when evaluating funds. Here are some of the questions I want answers to before investing in someone else's fund. Ultimately, these questions clarify whether or not my interests are aligned with those of the sponsor. Capital. How much will the sponsor's group invest in the fund personally? It doesn't need to be high, but it has to be enough to make sure they have skin in the game. And any investment, how much cash are you investing? And then I can make the decision of how much I'm going to invest with you. Recourse. Does the sponsor have to personally guarantee any debt? I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't, but if they do, they'll make sure that they have to successfully invest, because if things go bad, they don't have the option to just give the asset back to the bank, losing the investor's funds with no recourse to the sponsor. Fees. How much money in additional fees does the sponsor charge? There's nothing wrong with fees charged to manage a successful commercial real estate investment company, but do the sponsor partners make an above average or larger return up front before the investors make a return? If they only make their money on fees, then the alignment of interest is not there. Preferred return. Is there a preferred return, and if so, does it get paid monthly, quarterly, or annually? More importantly, does the interest on your money start accruing as soon as you invest or once the sponsor deploys the capital? Does your preferred return accrue so when the cash flow is paid out, the investor gets caught up first? These are all things you need to know as an investor, so you know in order you get paid when profits come in. Fourth quarter. Focusing on what matters. For me, the fourth quarter will be the age of 60 to however long I live, or else when I step back from investing activities due to health issues, or maybe I decide to retire. I don't see that. I'm going to stay healthy, and I love to work, so I don't think I'm ever going to truly retire, though. These are supposed to be the retirement years when you feel like you've arrived and you don't have to prove to yourself to anyone anymore. By this point, you've seen so many types of people and made so many mistakes that you no longer waste your time with petty stuff. I'd imagine this is when you want to give back to your family, to your community, and actualize those long-term visions of how you want to leave a legacy. Investment strategies for retirement. Most of this book is focused on investments that will grow your wealth, helping you recognize value-add potential in a property that will both cash flow and appreciate in value through forced appreciation. In many cases, you'll want to, in a few years, sell the property to recover your capital for reinvestment in the next value-add opportunity. This is how you maintain the velocity of your money. When you retire, or at least move on and spend more of your time on other endeavors besides making money, what you want from your investments can change. At this point in your life, you want to preserve wealth and have a steady, passive income that allows you to be financially free and spend your time on other things besides making money. You have other options besides real estate. Here are a summary of investment options you might consider. Stocks. They generally yield 5 to 12% year over year if you hold them long enough. Bonds. They can be around 2% up to the high 6 to 10% depending on the backing of the bond. Cryptocurrency. This is a relatively new asset class, but there is some value there. I don't want to get into it. Real estate. You know real estate is my number one asset class, and I believe it has all the benefits. Appreciation, leverage, massive tax advantages, debt pay down by tenants, and consistent cash flow. You own a real intrinsic asset. Soul Book is about real estate. That is what we're talking about. That is what I hope you own free and clear, and you have lots of assets when you retire at this stage of the game.